7 years of loving a man who never looked back. One night that changed everything. And a betrayal that would ignite a war between fate and freedom. The iron collar was cold against Ella's throat. She could feel the inscriptions carved into the metal, ancient runes that pulsed with a sickening rhythm, syncing with her own frantic heartbeat. Her wrists ached where the silver chains bit into her skin, burning with that particular agony only silver could inflict on her kind. But it wasn't the pain that made her want to scream. It wasn't even the betrayal, sharp and vicious as a knife between her ribs. It was the way he looked at her. Alpha King Jareth stood 5 feet away in the center of his private chamber, moonlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, turning his dark hair silver at the edges. His eyes, those midnight blue eyes she'd memorized over 7 years of stolen glances, were empty. Hollow. As if the man she'd loved in desperate, aching silence had never existed at all. "You promised," Ella whispered, and hated how her voice broke. "You promised me, Jareth." His jaw tightened. That was the only indication he'd heard her. "Promises," he said softly, dangerously, "are luxuries I can no longer afford." 3 hours earlier, Ella had been free. Well, as free as any Omega Wolf could be in the Shadowcrest Pack, the largest, most powerful pack in the Northern Territories, ruled with an iron fist by the Alpha King himself. She'd served in the royal household since she was 17, a orphaned Omega with no family, no status, and no future beyond the kitchens and corridors of the palace. But she'd had one thing. One precious, pathetic thing that had sustained her through 7 years of servitude. Hope. Hope that maybe, Alpha King Jareth had felt even a fraction of what she felt when their eyes met across crowded rooms. Hope that the way his gaze lingered on her, just a second too long, meant something. Hope that the promise he'd made to her 2 years ago, whispered in a moonlit garden during the Harvest Moon celebration, had been real. "When the time is right, Ella, I will claim you as mine. Not because you're an Omega. Not because of duty. But because you're the only one who sees me, truly sees me. Wait for me." Can you do that? She'd waited. Gods help her, she'd waited through every rumor of potential mates brought before him. Through every political marriage proposal he'd coldly declined. Through every lonely night in her small room in the servants' quarters, imagining what it would feel like to be held by him, chosen by him, loved by him. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was the blood moon, the one night every 7 years when the veil between wolves and their primal nature grew thin, when ancient magic thrummed through the pack bonds, when alpha power reached its peak. Jareth had summoned her to his chambers with a simple note delivered by his beta. "Come to me tonight. It's time." Her heart had nearly exploded with joy. She'd bathed in rose water, braided her long auburn hair the way she knew he liked, worn her only decent dress, a simple blue thing that matched her eyes. She'd walked through the palace corridors with her pulse racing, her wolf stirring beneath her skin with an excitement she'd never felt before. The guards had let her pass without question. They'd been expecting her. And when she'd entered Jareth's private chamber, the sanctum only his inner circle ever saw, he'd been standing exactly where he stood now, backlit by moonlight, impossibly beautiful and terrifyingly remote. Jareth, she'd breathed, and his name on her lips had felt like a prayer. "I came. Just like you asked." He'd turned to face her fully then, and something in his expression had made her wolf whimper with unease. "Close the door, Ella." She'd obeyed, her hands trembling slightly as she'd pushed the heavy oak door shut. The click of the lock had sounded too loud in the sudden silence. "I need you to understand something," Jareth had said, his voice carefully controlled. "What happens next isn't personal." "What do you mean?" Her joy had begun to curdle into confusion. "Jareth, you said it was time. You said—" "I know what I said." He'd moved then, closing the distance between them with that predatory grace all alphas possessed. But there'd been no warmth in his approach. No desire. 2 years ago, I made you a promise I had no right to make. I let my feelings cloud my judgment. That ends tonight. The floor had seemed to tilt beneath her feet. I don't understand. 3 days ago, Jareth had continued, as if she hadn't spoken. My intelligence network uncovered a plot. A powerful witch coven has been searching for someone with a very specific bloodline. An Omega with latent magic that only fully manifests during a blood moon. An Omega who has no idea what she truly is. Ella's breath had caught. What are you saying? I'm saying, Ella Thorne, that you are far more valuable than either of us realized. And I'm saying that I will not allow you to fall into their hands. Even if it means breaking my promise to you. Before she could move, before she could even process his words, he gestured to the shadows behind her. She'd spun around to find 4 of his elite guards emerging from the darkness, iron collar and silver chains in hand. No, she gasped, backing away. No, Jareth, please. You'll be kept here, he'd said flatly. In my chambers, under my direct protection. The collar will suppress your magic so they cannot track you. The chains are necessary until you accept your new reality. New reality? Horror had flooded through her. You're imprisoning me? I'm saving you. I trusted you. The words had ripped from her throat. I loved you. And there it was. 7 years of silence, shattered in one desperate confession. Jareth's eyes had flickered with something pain, regret, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Then you were a fool, he'd said quietly. The guards had moved fast. She'd tried to fight, tried to shift, but her Omega Wolf was no match for 4 trained warriors. They'd clamped the collar around her neck, and the moment the metal touched her skin, she'd felt it, a horrifying emptiness where her wolf had been. A silence where there should have been power. The silver chains had come next, binding her wrists, anchoring her to the reinforced ring bolted into the stone wall beside Jareth's massive bed. And now here she stood, collared and chained like a prisoner, staring at the man she'd loved for 7 years as he looked at her with the eyes of a stranger. You can't do this, Ella said, and was proud that her voice didn't shake this time. I'm not something you can just lock away because it's convenient. No, Jareth agreed, moving to the sideboard to pour himself a glass of whiskey. You're a weapon. One that could destroy everything I've built if the wrong people get their hands on you. A weapon. She laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged even to her own ears. I'm an Omega, Jareth. I have no power. No magic. I'm nothing. He drained the whiskey in one swallow and turned to face her again. You're wrong, he said softly. And tomorrow night, when the blood moon reaches its peak, you're going to find out exactly how wrong you are. I only hope that when you do, you'll understand why I did this. I'll never understand, Ella whispered. And I'll never forgive you. Something dark and terrible flickered across his face. Good, he said. Because forgiveness won't keep you alive. But my protection will. He walked toward the door, clearly intending to leave her here, chained and helpless in his chamber. Jareth. His name stopped him, his hand on the door handle. That promise you made me in the garden 2 years ago, did any of it mean anything to you? Or was it always a lie? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Didn't move. Then, without turning around, he said, it meant everything. That's why this hurts. The door opened. Closed. And Ella was alone. The iron collar pulsed against her throat, and deep in her chest, in that hollow place where her wolf should be, something else stirred. Something old. Something furious. Something that whispered, he has no idea what he's done. So what do you think? Drop a comment and tell me, is Jareth protecting her or destroying her? And what do you think this latent magic is really about? The chains were long enough to let Ella reach the bathroom. That was the first thing she discovered after an hour of furious pacing, testing the limits of her new prison. The second thing she discovered was that Jareth's private chambers were obscenely luxurious, all dark wood and soft furs, a massive bed with silk sheets that probably cost more than she'd earned in her entire 7 years of service. and windows that offered a breathtaking view of the packed territory stretching out beneath the palace. The third thing she discovered was that she couldn't cry. She wanted to. Gods, she wanted to collapse on that expensive floor and sob until her throat was raw. But the moment the tears tried to come, that strange stirring in her chest, that thing that had awakened when her wolf went silent, seemed to absorb them, swallow them, transform them into something else entirely. Rage. Cold, crystalline rage that made her bones ache and her vision sharpen and her mind clear of the heartbreak that should have been drowning her. Interesting, whispered a voice that wasn't quite her wolf. You're stronger than he thinks. Ella froze mid-step. Who said that? Silence. But the presence in her chest pulsed once, like a second heartbeat, and she knew with absolute certainty that she hadn't imagined it. What are you? She whispered to the empty room. The presence didn't answer. But it didn't leave either. A knock at the door made her jump. Before she could respond, it opened, and a woman stepped through carrying a tray of food. Ella recognized her immediately, Charlotte, one of the senior palace healers, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying blonde hair twisted into a neat bun. Oh, honey, Charlotte breathed when she saw Ella's chains. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I heard the rumors, but I didn't want to believe. You should leave, Ella said flatly. I'm sure the Alpha King doesn't want his prisoner receiving visitors. The Alpha King, Charlotte said with surprising steel in her voice, can go shove his orders up his royal backside. I've been healing wolves in this pack for 30 years, and I'll be damned if I let him starve a girl I've known since she was 17. Despite everything, Ella felt a flicker of warmth. Charlotte had always been kind to her, had always treated her like a person rather than just another Omega servant. When Ella had caught fever 3 winters ago, Charlotte had sat by her bedside for 2 days straight, forcing medicine and soup down her throat and telling her stories about the old days, before Jareth's father had died and left him the crown at 25. Charlotte set the tray on the low table near the fireplace and turned to examine Ella with a healer's critical eye. Her gaze lingered on the iron collar, and her mouth tightened into a thin line. Rune-carved, she muttered. Iron and silver composite. He really doesn't want you accessing your wolf, does he? Or my supposed magic, Ella said bitterly. Did you know? That I'm apparently some kind of magical time bomb waiting to explode. Charlotte's expression was carefully neutral. Come sit. Eat. We'll talk. Ella wanted to refuse, but her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, and the smell of roasted chicken and fresh bread was making her dizzy. She moved to the table, the chains clinking softly with each step, and sat in the plush armchair across from Charlotte. You knew, Ella said as she picked up a piece of bread. It wasn't a question. Charlotte sighed and settled into the opposite chair. I suspected. Your mother. I never knew my mother. Ella's voice came out sharper than intended. She died when I was born. Or that's what the orphanage told me anyway. The orphanage lied. Charlotte's words hung in the air like a bomb. Your mother didn't die, Ella. She ran. And she had good reason to. The bread turned to ash in Ella's mouth. What? Your mother's name was Lys of Thorn, Charlotte said softly. She was an Omega, like you. But she was also a witch, a rare bloodline that combined wolf and magic in ways most people thought were extinct. When she got pregnant with you, she knew what you would be, what you would become. And she knew that powerful people would come looking for you. Ella set down the bread, her appetite vanishing. So she just left me? Abandoned me at an orphanage and disappeared. She left you somewhere she thought you'd be hidden. Anonymous. Safe. Charlotte leaned forward, her eyes earnest. She loved you, Ella. Enough to give you up so you could live a normal life, free from the burden of your bloodline. But she made one mistake. What mistake? She didn't account for the blood moon. Every 7 years, when the magic is strongest, your true nature tries to surface. Most wolf-witch hybrids manifest their powers in adolescence, during their first blood moon after their first shift. But you, Charlotte shook her head wonderingly. You suppressed it somehow. Buried it so deep that even you didn't know it was there. Until now, Ella whispered. Until now, Charlotte agreed. You're 24, Ella. This is your fourth blood moon since your first shift. And according to the ancient texts, the fourth awakening is the most powerful, the most dangerous. If you're not properly trained, if you don't have someone to guide you through the transition. What? Ella demanded. What happens? Charlotte's face was grave. The magic consumes you, burns through you like wildfire. You either master it or it masters you. And if it masters you, she paused, you become something else entirely. Something that's neither wolf nor witch nor human. Something that kills everything it touches. The presence in Ella's chest pulsed again, stronger this time, and she felt a flash of heat race through her veins before it subsided. That's why he locked me up, she said slowly. He's not trying to protect me from witches. He's trying to protect his pack from me. Both, I think, Charlotte said gently. Jareth has always carried the weight of this pack on his shoulders. Ever since his father died and left him an alpha king at 25, barely grown himself. He makes the hard choices, the cruel choices, because he thinks that's what strength looks like. You're defending him? Anger flared hot in Ella's throat. He chained me, Charlotte. He broke his promise. He lied to me for 2 years, and now I'm a prisoner in his bedroom like some kind of. I'm not defending him, Charlotte interrupted firmly. I'm explaining him. There's a difference. What he did to you is unforgivable. But if you want to survive what's coming, you need to understand who you're dealing with. Ella sat back, her chains rattling against the chair. Fine. Explain. Charlotte was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When she spoke again, her voice was tinged with old sadness. Jareth's father, Alpha King Matthias, was a brutal man. Powerful, respected, but brutal. He believed that an alpha should rule through fear, that mercy was weakness, that love was a liability. He groomed Jareth from childhood to be the perfect weapon, no attachments, no vulnerabilities, no soft spots that enemies could exploit. Ella thought of the man who'd stood 5 feet away from her tonight, looking at her with those empty eyes. He succeeded. Did he? Charlotte's gaze was penetrating. Or did he just teach Jareth to hide his heart so well that even he forgot it was there? What's that supposed to mean? It means, Charlotte said carefully, that 7 years ago, when a 17-year-old Omega girl with auburn hair and heartbreaking blue eyes walked into this palace for the first time, the Alpha King noticed. He noticed the way you held your head high even though you had every reason to keep it bowed. He noticed the way you were kind to the other servants even when they treated you like dirt. He noticed the way you looked at the world like it might still have some beauty left in it, despite everything. Ella's throat tightened. How do you know that? Because I'm one of his inner circle, Charlotte said simply. I've served 3 generations of Alpha Kings, and I know things. I notice things. And I notice that for 7 years, Jareth has found excuses to be wherever you are. He walks through the kitchens more than any Alpha King in history. He inspects the servant quarters personally, which his father never did once. He attends every pack gathering, every festival, every celebration, and his eyes always find you in the crowd. Stop, Ella whispered. Please stop. 2 years ago, Charlotte continued relentlessly. During the Harvest Moon celebration, I saw him lead you into the garden. I saw him come back 45 minutes later looking like a man who'd just condemned himself to death. And from that night on, he was different. Harder. Colder. Like he'd made a decision that was killing him from the inside out. He promised to claim me, Ella said, and hated how small her voice sounded. He said he would wait until the time was right. Because he knew what you were, Charlotte said gently. Or at least, he suspected. And he knew that claiming you would paint a target on your back. Every enemy he had, and trust me, an Alpha King has many, would see you as his weakness. His vulnerability. The one thing they could use to destroy him. So he just, what? Decided to keep me at arm's length forever. He decided to protect you the only way he knew how. by keeping his distance, by pretending he didn't care. Charlotte's eyes were sad. But then the intelligence came in about the witch coven. Then he learned what you truly were and what would happen during this blood moon. And he realized that distance wasn't enough anymore. He needed to take more drastic measures. So he locked me up like an animal, Ella said bitterly. So he made himself the villain, Charlotte corrected softly, so that you would hate him instead of trusting him. Because if you trusted him, if you cared for him, you'd try to protect him when the darkness comes. And that would get you killed. Ella stared at her. That's insane. That's Jareth. Charlotte stood and moved toward the door. He'd rather have you alive and hating him than dead and loving his memory. Wait. Ella's voice stopped her. Why are you telling me this? If Jareth wanted me to hate him, why are you ruining his plan? Charlotte turned back, and there was something fierce in her expression. Because his plan is stupid. Because you're stronger than he thinks. And because someone needs to tell you the truth before tomorrow night when everything changes. What happens tomorrow night? The blood moon reaches its peak at midnight. Your magic will fully awaken, collar or no collar. And when it does, Charlotte hesitated. When it does, you'll have a choice. Let the magic consume you, become the monster everyone fears, and prove Jareth right. Or master it, control it, and show him that love isn't weakness, it's the strongest thing there is. With that, she slipped out the door, leaving Ella alone with her chains, her rage, and the strange presence in her chest that was growing stronger by the minute. Outside the window, the moon was rising. Not yet full, but close. So close. And deep in her bones, Ella could feel it calling to her. Calling her to wake up. Ella didn't sleep. How could she, when every nerve in her body felt like it was on fire? When the presence in her chest kept pulsing, growing stronger with each passing hour. When she could feel the moon rising outside those floor-to-ceiling windows, pulling at something deep inside her that had been dormant for 24 years. She lay on the silk sheets of Jareth's massive bed, because where else was she supposed to go, chained as she was, and stared at the ceiling, watching shadows dance across the dark wood beams. The fire in the hearth had burned down to embers, casting the room in shades of amber and black. It was nearly dawn when she heard it. Footsteps in the corridor outside. Measured, purposeful. She knew those footsteps. Had memorized them over 7 years of secretly listening for his approach, of timing her kitchen duties so she might catch a glimpse of him passing by. Jareth. The door opened without warning, and he stepped inside, closing it softly behind him. He was still wearing the same dark clothing from earlier, but his hair was disheveled now, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. His eyes found hers immediately across the darkened room, and something flickered in their depths, something that looked almost like relief. "You're awake," he said, his voice rough. "Hard to sleep in chains," Ella replied coldly, sitting up. "But I'm sure you wouldn't know anything about that, Your Majesty." A muscle in his jaw ticked. He moved further into the room, and she noticed he was carrying something, a leather-bound book, old and worn, with symbols etched into the cover that made her eyes hurt to look at directly. "We need to talk," he said. "I have nothing to say to you." "Then listen." He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat, his movements careful, controlled. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the shadows under his eyes. "Tomorrow night, when the blood moon peaks, your magic will manifest whether you want it to or not. The collar will slow it down, dampen it, but it won't stop it completely. Nothing can." "So you're saying you chained me for nothing?" Ella couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "I'm saying I bought us time." He opened the book, revealing pages covered in cramped handwriting and intricate diagrams. "This belonged to your mother." Ella's breath caught. "What?" Lissa Thorne kept detailed records of her own awakening. Her struggles, her training, her methods for controlling the magic that wanted to consume her. Jareth's fingers traced one of the diagrams, a circle within a circle, surrounded by runes. She left it with Charlotte 24 years ago, before she disappeared. Made her promise to give it to you when you manifested. Why didn't Charlotte give it to me herself? Because I asked her not to. Jareth looked up, meeting her gaze directly. I've spent the last 3 days reading this cover to cover, learning everything I could about what you are, what you'll become. And Ella, I need you to understand something. Your mother was powerful, more powerful than any wolf-witch hybrid in recorded history. But she was also terrified. Every entry in this journal is laced with fear. Fear of what she was. Fear of what she might do. Fear of the people who wanted to use her as a weapon. Like you're using me? The words came out sharper than glass. I'm not using you, Jareth said quietly. I'm trying to save you from the same fate that destroyed her. My mother wasn't destroyed. She left. She chose to run. No, Jareth's voice was heavy with a grief she didn't understand. She didn't run, Ella. She died. 3 months after she left you at that orphanage, her body was found on the northern border, burned from the inside out. Her magic had consumed her. The words hit Ella like a physical blow. The room spun, and she gripped the edge of the bed to steady herself. You're lying, she whispered. I wish I was. Jareth closed the book gently, reverently. My father covered it up. Told everyone she'd fled the territory. But I found the truth in his private records after he died. Your mother tried to master her power alone, without guidance, without help. And it killed her. Tears burned in Ella's eyes, but that strange presence in her chest absorbed them again, transforming grief into something else. Something that felt almost like purpose. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Because I need you to understand what's at stake. Jareth leaned forward, and for the first time since he'd imprisoned her, she saw real emotion flicker across his face. Fear. I made you a promise 2 years ago, and I broke it tonight. I let you believe I was the villain so you wouldn't fight me on this. But the truth is, Ella, I'm terrified. Terrified of losing you to the same darkness that took your mother. Terrified that I'm not strong enough to help you through this. Terrified that loving you will be what destroys us both. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and vulnerable. You love me? Ella's voice was barely a whisper. Jareth's laugh was broken. How could I not? You walked into my life 7 years ago like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, and I've been drowning in you ever since. Every smile you gave the kitchen staff, every kindness you showed to wolves who didn't deserve it, every moment you looked at the world with hope instead of cynicism, it destroyed me. Made me want things an alpha king has no right to want. Then why? Because wanting you and keeping you safe are 2 different things. He stood abruptly, began pacing. My father taught me that an alpha's duty is to his pack first, his heart last. That love makes you weak, vulnerable, easy to manipulate. And for 7 years, I fought it. Kept my distance. Told myself that as long as I didn't claim you, you'd be safe from my enemies. That's not your choice to make, Ella said, anger rising hot and fast. You don't get to decide what's safe for me. You don't get to lock me up and break your promises and call it protection. I know. Jareth stopped pacing, turned to face her. I know it's not right. I know it's cruel. But when I got the intelligence about the witch coven, when I learned what they wanted to do to you, his voice cracked. They're collecting wolf-witch hybrids, Ella. Experimenting on them. Trying to harness their power, weaponize it. And the ones who don't survive the process, they don't die quickly. Ella felt ice slide down her spine. How do you know this? Because 3 days ago, we found the body of another hybrid on our southern border. A young woman, barely 20. What they'd done to her. Jareth's hands clenched into fists. I won't let that happen to you. I can't. Before Ella could respond, a commotion erupted outside the chamber door. Shouting, running footsteps, the sound of steel being drawn. Jareth moved instantly, positioning himself between Ella and the door, his alpha power flooding the room with such intensity that, even through the collar, she could feel it pressing against her skin. The door burst open and Jareth's beta, a tall, scarred man named Liam, stumbled through, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. Sire, he gasped. They're here. The Coven. They breached the outer walls 10 minutes ago. They're heading straight for the palace. How many? Jareth's voice was deadly calm. At least 30 witches. Maybe more. They have a void walker with them. She's tearing through our defenses like they're paper. Jareth cursed viciously. Evacuate the palace. Get every non-combatant to the safe rooms. Triple the guard on. They're not here for the palace, Liam interrupted, his eyes flicking to Ella. They're here for her. They're chanting her name, sire. They know she's here. They know what she is. The presence in Ella's chest suddenly exploded with heat, and she gasped, doubling over as power, raw, ancient, terrifying, surged through her veins. The iron collar began to glow red-hot against her skin, the runes flickering and sparking as they struggled to contain the magic forcing its way to the surface. It's too soon. Charlotte's voice came from the doorway, sharp with panic. She pushed past Liam, her healer's bag already in hand. The blood moon isn't until tomorrow night. She shouldn't be manifesting yet. The Coven, Jareth snarled. They're doing something. Some kind of ritual to force her awakening early. Ella's vision blurred, doubled. She could feel the magic in her blood now, feel it racing through her like liquid fire, demanding release. The chains around her wrists began to smoke where the silver touched her skin, and she screamed as the pain intensified. Get the collar off her, Charlotte ordered. If she manifests while it's suppressing her power, it'll burn her alive from the inside. If I take it off, she'll be completely vulnerable to the Coven's magic, Jareth shot back. They'll be able to track her, control her. She's going to die if you don't, Charlotte shouted. Another surge of power, stronger this time, and Ella felt something inside her shift. The presence that had been growing in her chest suddenly expanded, filling every corner of her being, and with it came a voice, clear and commanding and undeniably hers, yet somehow different. Let me out, it demanded. Let me out. Jareth, Ella gasped, looking up at him through tears of pain. Please. I can't hold it. She saw the moment he made his decision. Saw the fear and love and desperate hope war across his face. Then he was moving, pulling a key from his pocket, reaching for the collar around her neck. If you die, he said roughly, his fingers working the lock, I will burn this world to ash and follow you into the darkness. Do you understand me? The collar clicked open and fell away. And Ella's world exploded into light. Power erupted from her in a shockwave that sent everyone stumbling backward. The chains shattered like glass. The windows blew outward in a shower of glittering fragments. And Ella rose from the bed, her body outlined in silver-white fire, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly radiance that made even Jareth's alpha power look dim by comparison. For a moment, just a moment, she wasn't Ella the Omega anymore. She was something else entirely. Something ancient and powerful and absolutely terrifying. Ella, Jareth said carefully, like he was approaching a wild animal. Can you hear me? She turned to look at him, and the expression on her face was one he'd never seen before, primal, knowing, infinitely old. They're coming, she said, and her voice echoed with layers of sound that shouldn't have been possible from a human throat. They think they can take me. Use me. Control me. A smile curved her lips, beautiful and terrible. They have no idea what they've awakened. Then she moved, faster than should have been possible, heading straight for the shattered windows and the battle raging outside. Stop her, Liam shouted. But Jareth raised a hand, halting him. His eyes were locked on Ella's retreating figure, and in them was a mix of terror and awe and something that looked almost like pride. No, he said softly. Let them see what happens when you back a wolf witch into a corner. Ella reached the window and leaped, her body shifting midair into something that was neither entirely wolf nor entirely human, a hybrid form wreathed in silver flames, powerful and graceful and absolutely lethal. And as she disappeared into the night, racing toward the Coven that dared to hunt her, one thought echoed through Jareth's mind. I've just unleashed something that could save us all, or destroy everything. But there was no going back now. The game had changed. And Ella Thorne was no one's prisoner anymore. Holy shift, right? Ella just went full badass mode. Comment below, are you Team Ella or Team Jareth right now? Because I'm honestly torn. And if you're loving this story, smash that subscribe button because we're only getting started. The palace grounds were chaos. Ella landed on the manicured lawn in her hybrid form, half wolf, half woman, wreathed in silver fire that didn't burn but hummed with power. Through her enhanced senses, she could hear everything: the clash of steel against magic, the screams of wounded warriors, the guttural chanting of the witch coven as they pressed their assault on Jareth's guards. And underneath it all, she could hear them. The witches calling to her, calling to the power in her blood. "Sister," they whispered through the magical currents in the air. "Sister, come to us. Come home." "I'm nobody's sister," Ella snarled, and her voice carried across the battlefield with supernatural force. The fighting stuttered to a halt. Witches and wolves alike turned to stare at the glowing figure standing in the center of the lawn, power radiating from her invisible waves that bent the grass and made the air shimmer like heat-off summer pavement. A woman stepped forward from the coven's ranks, tall, bone-thin, with midnight black hair and eyes that swirled with purple energy. The Void Walker that Liam had mentioned. She wore robes the color of dried blood, and when she smiled, her teeth were too sharp, too many. "Ella Thorne," the Void Walker purred. "Daughter of Lissa. The last bloodline. You're even more magnificent than the prophecies promised." "I don't know you," Ella said, fighting to keep control of the power surging through her. Every instinct screamed at her to attack, to destroy, to burn. But she forced herself to stay still, to think. "And I don't care about your prophecies. Leave this territory, and I'll let you live." The Void Walker laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "Let us live? Oh, little wolf witch. You have no idea what you are, do you? What you could become with proper guidance." "I know enough," Ella shot back. "I know you've been hunting hybrids. Experimenting on them. Killing them. Sacrifices," the Void Walker said dismissively. "Necessary steps in understanding the power your kind possesses. But you're different. You're the one we've been searching for. The one with enough raw power to open the veil." Behind Ella, she heard the palace doors burst open. Felt Jareth's presence like a shock of electricity down her spine. His alpha power rolled across the grounds, making every wolf present straighten instinctively, but even his considerable strength felt muted compared to what was coursing through her veins. "Mara," Jareth called out, his voice deadly calm. "This is your only warning. Take your coven and leave Shadowcrest territory, or I will consider this an act of war against the Northern Territories." The Void Walker, Mara, turned her unsettling gaze to him, and her smile widened. "Ah, the Alpha King. How noble you look, ready to defend your little pet. Tell me, does she know yet? Does she know what will happen when her power fully manifests tomorrow night?" "Don't listen to her," Jareth said, and Ella could hear the tension in his voice. "She's trying to manipulate you." "I'm trying to educate her," Mara corrected. "Because unlike you, Alpha King, I don't believe in keeping people ignorant for their own good." She turned back to Ella. "When the blood moon reaches its peak tomorrow night, your power will complete its awakening. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. Embrace what you are and ascend to become something greater than wolf or witch, a being of pure magical energy, immortal and unlimited. Or resist, and let the power burn through your mortal form until there's nothing left but ash." Ella's heart hammered against her ribs. "You're lying." "Am I?" Mara gestured, and one of her coven members stepped forward, pulling back her hood. Ella gasped. The woman was young, maybe 19, with the distinctive features of a wolf-witch hybrid, dual-colored eyes, one gold and one violet. But her skin was covered in glowing cracks, like she was a porcelain doll barely holding itself together. Magic leaked from those cracks in wisps of colored light. "This is Ivy," Mara said softly. "Another hybrid." another daughter of a mixed bloodline. She manifested 3 months ago during the last lunar eclipse. And because she had no guidance, no training, no understanding of what was happening to her, Mara's voice turned cold. She's dying. Slowly. Painfully. Her mortal form can't contain the power trying to break free. Ivy's voice was barely a whisper. Help me. Please. Ella took an involuntary step forward, but Jareth's hand caught her arm, his grip firm. It's a trick, he said urgently. Don't. It's not a trick, Mara interrupted. It's a demonstration. This is what happens to hybrids who try to resist their nature. This is what happened to your mother, Ella. She refused to ascend, refused to let go of her mortal form, and the magic tore her apart from the inside. My mother died because she was alone, Ella said fiercely. Because people like you hunted her, gave her no choice. We're offering you a choice right now. Mara's purple eyes blazed. Come with us. Let us teach you to control your power, to harness it, to become what you were meant to be. We can save Ivy. We can save you. All you have to do is trust us. Trust you. Ella's laugh was bitter. You breached our territory, attacked our people, and you want me to trust you? We did what was necessary to reach you before tomorrow night, Mara said. Before the Alpha King's collar burned you alive, or his chains kept you suppressed until the magic had no choice but to explode outward and take half his pack with it. Jareth's hand tightened on Ella's arm. That's not. Isn't it? Mara's gaze was penetrating. Tell her, Alpha King. Tell her what your precious research revealed. Tell her what happens to everyone within a mile radius when a hybrid's power manifests without control. The silence that followed was damning. Jareth? Ella turned to look at him and saw the truth written across his face. The guilt. The fear. What is she talking about? Your mother's death wasn't just her, Jareth said quietly. When her power consumed her, it took out an entire village. 43 wolves dead in an instant. That's why my father covered it up. That's why he was so afraid of your bloodline. Ella jerked her arm free, staggering back. And you knew this. You've known this whole time and you didn't tell me. I was trying to protect you. By keeping me in the dark? The power inside her surged in response to her anger, and Ella felt the silver flames around her body flare brighter. By making decisions for me like I'm some kind of child who can't handle the truth? Ella, please. You see, Mara's voice was almost gentle now. He claims to love you, but he treats you like a weapon to be locked away. We see you as what you truly are, a goddess waiting to be born. For a long moment, Ella stood frozen between them. The Alpha King who had imprisoned her but claimed it was for love. The Void Walker who offered freedom, but reeked of manipulation. And inside her, the power continued to build, pressing against her mortal form like a caged animal demanding release. Then Charlotte's voice cut through the tension, sharp with authority. Everyone shut up and listen to me. The elderly healer stormed across the lawn, her bag still clutched in one hand, her expression fierce enough to make even Mara pause. I've been healing wolves and studying magical theory for 30 years, Charlotte announced, and I'm about to tell you all something that none of you want to hear. She pointed at Mara. You're right that Ella needs training. You're right that her power will consume her without guidance. But you're lying about the ascension. There is no becoming a goddess. There's only losing your humanity and becoming a magical parasite that feeds on other living beings to sustain itself. I've read the texts. I know what you're really offering her. Mara's expression darkened. Old woman, you have no idea. And you, Charlotte rounded on Jareth, are an idiot. A well-meaning idiot, but an idiot nonetheless. You can't protect someone by controlling them. You can't save someone by making their choices for them. All you do is drive them away. She turned to Ella, her eyes softening. But you, honey, you need to listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you might save your life. Ella felt tears burning in her eyes, real tears this time, not absorbed by the power but allowed to fall. I'm listening. Your mother kept a journal, yes. But there was one entry that Jareth didn't read to you. One entry that changes everything. Charlotte pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag with shaking hands. She wrote it the night before she died. And she left instructions for me to give it to you if you ever manifested. She held out the paper, and Ella took it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was elegant but hurried, as if written in desperate haste. My darling Ella, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. You've manifested, and you're standing at the same crossroads that destroyed me. I'm dying as I write this. I can feel the magic eating through me, demanding I either surrender to it completely or watch it burn me to ash. And I've made my choice. I choose to burn. Because ascending means losing everything that makes me human. Everything that makes me your mother. But you don't have to make the same choice, baby girl. There's a third path. One I didn't discover until it was too late. Love. Not the abstract kind. Not duty or obligation or sacrifice. Real love. The kind that sees all of you, the human and the wolf and the witch, and chooses you anyway. The kind that doesn't try to control or suppress or mold you into something safe. The kind that stands beside you in the darkness and says, I'm here. I'm not leaving. We'll figure this out together. Find someone who loves you like that, Ella. Let them anchor you. Let them be the tether that keeps your humanity intact while your power grows. Because the magic feeds on isolation, on fear, on the belief that you have to face this alone. You don't. You never did. I love you. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to find my anchor. But I believe you will be. Mom. By the time Ella finished reading, she was openly crying. The paper trembled in her hands, and the power inside her had gone very, very still, as if it too was listening. She found out too late, Charlotte said softly. But she left you the answer. The magic doesn't have to consume you or change you into something else. It just needs to be balanced, grounded. And that requires complete trust, complete vulnerability, complete love, Ella whispered. She looked up at Jareth and saw him staring at her with an expression that made her chest ache. Raw, desperate, terrified. I don't know how to do this, he said hoarsely. I don't know how to love someone without trying to protect them from everything, including themselves. My father never taught me that. But Ella, I swear to you, I will learn. I will try. If you'll let me. This is ridiculous, Mara spat. You think love is going to save you? You think this alpha who chained you up and broke his promises is going to be your salvation? No, Ella said quietly, her eyes still locked on Jareth. I think we might save each other. If we're brave enough to try. She turned to face Mara fully, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. I'm not going with you. I'm not ascending. And I'm not dying. I'm going to find a way to master this power without losing my humanity, and I'm going to do it here, with my pack, with people who actually see me as a person instead of a weapon or a goddess or a sacrifice. Mara's face twisted with rage. You're making a mistake. Then it's my mistake to make, Ella said firmly. For a moment, she thought Mara might attack. Thought the Voidwalker's barely restrained fury might explode into violence. But then Mara's gaze flicked to something behind Ella, and her expression shifted into something calculating. Very well, she said coldly. Make your choice. Cling to your mortality. But know this, Ella Thorne, when your power reaches its peak tomorrow night, and you realize you can't control it, when you feel yourself burning from the inside out and taking everyone you love with you, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember that I offered you a way out, and you refused. She gestured to her coven, and they began to retreat, melting back into the shadows at the edge of the grounds. But before she disappeared entirely, Mara called back one last time. Oh, and Alpha King? You might want to check on your southern border. We weren't the only ones interested in your little hybrid. The Crimson Moon Pack has been gathering forces for 3 days now. Seems they heard rumors about a weapon powerful enough to tip the balance of power in the Northern Territories. Her laugh echoed in the darkness. Sleep well. Then they were gone, vanished as suddenly as they'd appeared, leaving behind only wounded guards and a lawn scorched with magical residue. Jareth immediately turned to Liam. Send scouts to the southern border. I want eyes on Crimson Moon's movements within the hour. Double the palace guard. And get healers out here for the wounded. Jareth. Ella's voice stopped him mid-command. We need to talk. Now. No more secrets. No more half-truths. If we're going to do this, if we're going to try to make this work, then I need you to be honest with me. About everything. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw him struggling. Saw the Alpha King warring with the man underneath, the one who'd been taught that vulnerability was weakness, that sharing burdens was foolish, that standing alone was the only way to survive. Then, slowly, he nodded. You're right, he said quietly. Come on. Let's go somewhere private. I'll tell you everything. As they walked back toward the palace, Ella, still glowing faintly with silver light, Jareth's hand hovering near her lower back, but not quite touching, Charlotte caught Ella's eye and smiled. It was a sad smile. A knowing smile. A smile that said, the hardest part is just beginning. But at least you're not facing it alone. And as the first rays of dawn began to break over the horizon, Ella realized something that made her both terrified and hopeful. She had less than 24 hours until the blood moon reached its peak. Less than 24 hours to learn to control a power that had destroyed her mother. Less than 24 hours to decide if she could really trust the man who'd broken her heart. And somehow, impossibly, she was going to have to do all of it while an entire pack of enemies closed in from the south, and a coven of witches waited in the shadows for her to fail. No pressure, she thought grimly. But as they entered the palace and Jareth finally, tentatively, let his hand rest on her back, a touch that was protective but not controlling, supportive but not confining, Ella felt something shift inside her. The power didn't surge or fight or demand. It settled. Just a little. Just enough. And she thought, maybe we can do this after all. Jareth's private study was nothing like his bedroom. Where the sleeping chamber had been all dark luxury and calculated comfort, the study was pure function. 3 walls lined floor to ceiling with books, maps spread across a massive oak desk, and a war table in the center covered with carved wooden figures representing pack positions and enemy territories. The 4th wall was solid glass, offering a view of the eastern mountains where the sun was now fully risen, painting the snow-capped peaks in shades of gold and pink. Ella stood by that window, her fingers pressed against the cool glass, still feeling the hum of power beneath her skin. The silver flames had faded when they'd entered the palace, but the magic itself remained, a constant presence now, like a second heartbeat she couldn't ignore. Behind her, she heard Jareth dismiss the guards who'd tried to follow them inside. Heard the heavy door close with a decisive thunk. Then silence. I don't know where to start, he said finally. Ella turned to face him. In the morning light, he looked different, less like the untouchable Alpha King and more like a man carrying the weight of impossible choices. His dark hair was still disheveled, his shirt torn at the shoulder from the battle, and there was blood, not his own, splattered across his jaw. Start with the truth, she said quietly. All of it. Why did you really make me that promise 2 years ago? And why did you wait until now to break it? Jareth moved to the sideboard and poured himself a drink, whiskey, despite the early hour. He downed it in one swallow, then gripped the edge of the furniture like it was the only thing keeping him upright. 2 years ago, he began, his voice rough, I was investigating a series of disappearances along our western border. Young wolves, all omegas, all between the ages of 17 and 25, vanishing without a trace. No bodies. No scent trails. Just gone. Ella's stomach tightened. The coven. I didn't know that then. All I knew was that someone was hunting vulnerable members of my pack, and I was failing to protect them. He turned to face her, and the guilt in his eyes was almost painful to witness. The night of the harvest moon celebration, I'd just returned from finding the 5th victim. Or what was left of her. They'd drained her of blood, carved runes into her skin, and left her body in a circle of black salt. A ritual sacrifice. Gods, Ella whispered. I came to the celebration because I had to, because an alpha king who hides in his study while his pack celebrates is a weak alpha king. But I was drowning in rage and grief and the crushing knowledge that I had no idea how to stop what was happening. Jareth's laugh was bitter. And then I saw you. Ella's breath caught. Me? You were dancing with some of the kitchen staff. Laughing. Your hair was down. You almost never wore it down, and there were flowers woven through it. White roses. And I thought, he paused, his throat working. I thought, she looks like hope. Like proof that there was still beauty in the world, still light, still something worth protecting. So you led me into the garden, Ella said softly. I told myself I just needed to see you up close. Just once. Just to remind myself why I was fighting so hard to save a pack that was slowly being picked apart by invisible enemies. Jareth ran a hand through his hair, the gesture frustrated. But then you looked at me, really looked at me, not at the crown or the title or the power, and you asked if I was all right. No one had asked me that in years. Maybe ever. Ella remembered that night with painful clarity. Remembered how tired he'd looked, how the moonlight had caught the edges of his face and made him look almost vulnerable. How she'd reached out without thinking and touched his hand, and he'd flinched like she'd burned him. I couldn't help it, she admitted. You looked like you were carrying the world on your shoulders and about to collapse under the weight. That's exactly how I felt, Jareth said quietly. And then you said something that broke me. What did I say? You said, you don't have to be strong all the time. Sometimes the bravest thing is admitting you need help. His eyes met hers. And I realized in that moment that I'd been falling in love with you for 5 years without even knowing it. That every time I found an excuse to walk through the kitchens, every time I attended a pack gathering I had no business being at, every time I looked for you in the crowds, it was because somewhere along the way, you'd become the reason I kept fighting. Tears burned in Ella's eyes. Then why didn't you just claim me then? Why the promise? Why the waiting? Because 3 days later, I got the first report about wolf-witch hybrids. Jareth's expression darkened. One of my spies in the coven infiltrated deep enough to learn what they were really looking for. Not just any Omega. A specific bloodline. A specific power. And when I saw the description, auburn hair, blue eyes, approximately 22 years old, abandoned at an orphanage in the Eastern Territories, I knew. You knew it was me, Ella whispered. I knew you were in danger. I knew that if I claimed you, if I made our connection public, I'd be painting a target on your back the size of the entire Northern Territories. Jareth moved closer, and Ella could see the anguish in every line of his face. So I made a choice. I would keep my distance, keep you safe in obscurity, and I would hunt down every member of that coven until you were no longer in danger. Then, only then, would I claim you the way I wanted to, the way you deserved. But you couldn't stay away, Ella said, understanding dawning. That's why you kept finding excuses to see me. Why you attended every gathering. I'm weak when it comes to you, Jareth admitted. I told myself that as long as I didn't touch you, didn't speak to you beyond what was necessary, I could maintain the fiction. But Ella, every day was torture. Watching you smile at other wolves. Watching you live your life without knowing how desperately I wanted to be part of it. And then, 2 years ago, I broke. I pulled you into that garden and I made you a promise I knew I might never be able to keep, because I was selfish and desperate and I needed you to know that someone saw you. That someone wanted you. You said you'd claim me when the time was right, Ella said, her voice shaking. You said to wait for you. I know. Jareth's hands clenched into fists. And you did. You waited. You were patient and loyal and perfect, and all the while I was lying to you. Because the truth was, I didn't know if the time would ever be right. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to make you mine without destroying you in the process. So what changed? Ella demanded. Why break your promise now? Why chain me up and push me away if you love me so much? Because 4 days ago, everything went to hell, Jareth said grimly. He moved to his desk and pulled out a folder, spreading its contents across the surface. My spy in the coven sent me this. It's their master plan, Ella. Everything they've been working toward for the past 7 years. Ella moved closer, looking down at the documents. They were covered in cramped handwriting, diagrams, ritual circles, and her blood ran cold, a drawing of her face. They call it the Ascension Protocol, Jareth explained, pointing to a page covered in arcane symbols. They've been collecting hybrids for years, experimenting on them, trying to unlock the secret of controlled magical ascension. Everyone failed. Everyone either died or went mad or became something monstrous that had to be put down. But they finally figured out what was missing. What? Ella's voice was barely a whisper. A catalyst. Jareth's finger moved to another page, this one showing a lunar chart. The fourth blood moon after a hybrid's first manifestation. That's when the power reaches critical mass. That's when ascension becomes possible. And you, Ella, you're the only known hybrid who's reached that milestone. You're the only one who survived long enough. Because I didn't know what I was, Ella realized. Because my power stayed dormant. Exactly. You're the perfect test subject. If they can force your ascension, study the process, replicate it, they'll be able to create an army of immortal magical beings. Beings that could overthrow every alpha in the Northern Territories. Beings that could remake the world in whatever image they choose. Ella's legs felt weak. She sank into the chair beside the desk, her mind reeling. So when you got this information? I panicked, Jareth admitted bluntly. I knew the blood moon was coming. I knew you'd manifest whether I wanted you to or not. And I knew that the moment you did, the Coven would come for you with everything they had. So I made another choice. I summoned you to my chambers, I had the collar and chains prepared, and I decided to keep you here, where I could protect you, where I could monitor you, where they couldn't reach you. Without asking me, Ella said quietly. Without giving me a choice. I know. Jareth's voice cracked. I know it was wrong. I know I became exactly what my father taught me to be, an alpha who makes decisions for his pack without considering their autonomy. An alpha who believes control equals protection. But Ella, I was terrified. I'm still terrified. Because the alternative to you hating me was you dying, and I couldn't, he broke off, his composure finally shattering. I couldn't survive losing you. The raw honesty in his voice, the naked vulnerability, hit Ella like a physical blow. This was the man underneath the crown. The one who'd been taught to bury his heart so deep he'd almost forgotten it existed. The one who was failing, but trying to learn how to love without controlling. I don't hate you, she said softly, and watched his head snap up. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I feel betrayed and manipulated and like you stole my agency when I needed it most. But I don't hate you, Jareth. I don't think I could if I tried. You should, he said hoarsely. You should hate me. You should walk away and never look back. Probably, Ella agreed. But my mother's letter said love means standing beside someone in the darkness and saying, I'm here. I'm not leaving. We'll figure this out together. So that's what I'm doing. Even though you're an idiot. Even though you hurt me. I'm choosing to stay and figure this out. Jareth stared at her like she'd just offered him salvation he didn't deserve. Why? Because 7 years ago, a 17-year-old orphan Omega walked into a palace full of wolves who looked at her like she was invisible, and one person, just one, saw her. Really saw her. Ella stood and moved closer until they were barely a foot apart. You've been my reason to keep hoping, Jareth. My reason to believe that maybe I was worth something more than just serving meals and scrubbing floors. And I'm not ready to give up on that. On us. Not yet. Ella. But, she interrupted firmly, if we're going to do this, if we're going to face what's coming together, then you need to promise me something. And this time, you need to actually keep your promise. Anything, he breathed. No more secrets. No more making decisions for me. No more trying to protect me by pushing me away. Her voice was steady, certain. You treat me like an equal partner, or this ends right now. Do you understand? For a long moment, Jareth just looked at her. Then, slowly, deliberately, he took her hand, the first time he'd really touched her with tenderness since this nightmare began. I promise, he said. No more secrets. No more controlling you. We face everything together as equals. Even if it terrifies me. Even if every instinct I have screams at me to lock you away and keep you safe. I promise, Ella. The power inside her responded to his touch, to his words, to the sincerity in his eyes. It didn't surge or fight. It recognized him. Like calling to like. And Ella felt something inside her chest, that place where her wolf should be but wasn't, suddenly warm with a feeling she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Good, she said. Then let's. The study door burst open, and Liam stumbled through, his face pale with fear. Sire, he gasped. The scouts just returned from the southern border. Crimson Moon Pack, they're not just gathering forces. They're marching. 300 warriors minimum. They'll reach our territory by nightfall. Jareth's expression went hard. Nightfall. Right when the blood moon reaches its peak. It gets worse, Liam continued. They're not alone. They've formed an alliance with 2 other packs, Ironwood and Silverfang. We're looking at nearly 1,000 warriors total, all converging on Shadowcrest at the exact moment Ella's power manifests. They're going to use the chaos, Ella realized with horror. Use my manifestation as a distraction while they attack. Or they're planning to capture you in the confusion, Jareth said grimly. Either way, we're facing a full-scale invasion in less than 15 hours, and we're completely unprepared. What are our numbers? Ella asked. Liam's expression was grim. 400 warriors, maybe. And half of them are still recovering from last night's attack by the Coven. We're outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Silence fell over the study, heavy with the weight of impossible odds. Then Ella spoke, her voice calm despite the fear clawing at her insides. So we need to even the odds, she said. We need an advantage they're not expecting. What are you suggesting? Jareth asked carefully. Ella met his eyes, and in hers was a determination that made his wolf sit up and take notice. I'm suggesting we stop treating my power like a liability, she said. And start treating it like the weapon it was always meant to be. Not for them. For us. Ella, you can't control it yet. Then we have 15 hours to figure it out, she interrupted. Because I'm not hiding in this palace while your pack fights and dies. I'm not letting fear make me weak. My mother's letter said I need an anchor, someone to keep me grounded while my power grows. Well, you're my anchor, Jareth. So anchor me. Help me learn to harness this magic before the blood moon rises. And then we'll show Crimson Moon and their allies exactly what happens when they threaten our home. Our home. The words hit Jareth like a lightning strike. She'd said our. Like she belonged here. Like she was claiming this pack, this territory, him, as hers. You're talking about going into battle, he said quietly. About using untested, barely controlled power against an army while your magic is at its most unstable. You could lose yourself. You could become exactly what the Coven wants, a mindless magical weapon. I could, Ella agreed. Or I could become exactly what this pack needs, a wolf-witch hybrid who chose her humanity over ascension and learned to wield her power without losing her soul. But I can't do it alone, Jareth. I need you. Not as my captor. Not as my protector. As my partner. Jareth looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the frightened Omega he'd imprisoned last night, but an alpha female in the making. Strong. Fierce. Unbreakable. His equal. Liam, he said without taking his eyes off Ella, cancel all my appointments for the day. Summon Charlotte and bring every book on Wolfwitch magic from the archives. And send word to the warriors, we go to full battle readiness at sunset. No one sleeps until we know exactly what we're facing. Yes, sire, Liam said, and Ella heard the respect in his voice. Not just for his alpha, but for her too. When they were alone again, Jareth pulled Ella into his arms carefully, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she melted into him, breathing in his scent of pine and winter air and wild wolf, letting herself take comfort in his solid presence. I'm terrified, he admitted against her hair. Terrified of losing you. Terrified of watching your power consume you. Terrified that I'm not strong enough to be what you need. Good, Ella said, pulling back to look up at him. Because I'm terrified too. But we're terrified together. And somehow, that makes it bearable. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. If we survive this. When we survive this, she corrected. When we survive this, he amended with a ghost of a smile, I'm going to claim you properly. In front of the entire pack. No secrets. No hiding. I'm going to tell everyone that you're mine and I'm yours, and damn the consequences. I'm going to hold you to that, Ella said. But first, we need to save our pack. So come on, Alpha King. Show me how to turn this curse into a weapon. As they moved to the war table to begin planning, neither of them saw the shadow that detached from the corner of the room, a shadow that had been there the entire time, listening to every word. And neither of them saw it slip out through the window and race across the grounds toward the forest, where a woman with purple eyes and 2 sharp teeth waited for her spy's report. Mara smiled when she heard what the Alpha King and his little hybrid were planning. Perfect, she purred. Let them think they're in control. Let them think their love will save them. And when the blood moon rises and Ella's power reaches its peak, we'll show them exactly what happens when you try to fight fate. She turned to her coven, gathered in the shadows of the forest. Change of plans, she announced. We're not waiting for Crimson Moon to attack. We're going to help them. And in the chaos, while Jareth is distracted defending his territory, we'll take what's ours. And if the Alpha King gets in the way, one of her coven members asked. Mara's smile turned sharp. Then we'll make sure Ella watches him die. Nothing breaks a hybrid's control faster than grief. And a grieving, uncontrolled hybrid during a blood moon? She laughed. That's exactly what we need for the Ascension Protocol to succeed. In the palace, Ella felt a sudden chill race down her spine. The power in her chest pulsed once, sharply, like a warning. What is it? Jareth asked immediately, attuned to every shift in her expression. I don't know, Ella said slowly. But something just changed. Something bad. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, marking the passage of hours they couldn't afford to lose, both of them had the same terrible thought. We're running out of time. Okay, but that twist though. Mara has a spy in the palace. And she's planning to use Jareth's death to break Ella? I'm stressed. Drop a comment and tell me, who do you think the spy is? And do you think Ella and Jareth can actually pull this off? Because honestly, I'm not sure, and I wrote it. If you're as hooked as I am, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next part. The hours bled together like watercolors in rain. Charlotte arrived within minutes of being summoned, her arms loaded with ancient texts that smelled of dust and old magic. She spread them across the war table alongside Jareth's maps, creating a strange juxtaposition of military strategy and arcane theory. Your mother left more than just that letter, Charlotte said, flipping open the largest tome. She documented everything. Every stage of her awakening. Every technique she tried. Every success and every devastating failure. Ella leaned over the book, her eyes scanning the cramped handwriting that matched the letter she'd read earlier. But these entries were different, clinical, desperate, tinged with growing panic as her mother realized she was losing the battle against her own power. Day 12. The magic is growing stronger. I can feel it pressing against my ribs like a caged animal. Today, I accidentally shattered every window in the house just by thinking too hard about Marcus leaving. I need to learn control. I must learn control. Day 28. Meditation helps. Focusing on something concrete, Marcus's face, the sound of rain, the smell of pine, can sometimes redirect the power when it surges. But it's exhausting. I'm so tired. Day 47. I hurt someone today. Didn't mean to. She bumped into me in the market and I was startled and the magic it lashed out. She'll recover. But I saw the fear in her eyes. The way she looked at me like I was a monster. Maybe I am. Who's Marcus? Ella asked, her voice tight. Charlotte's expression softened with old grief. Your father. He was a warrior in the pack, strong, kind, completely devoted to your mother. When she realized she was pregnant with you, when she understood what you'd inherit from her bloodline, he promised to stand by her. Promised they'd figure it out together. What happened to him? The silence that followed was answer enough. He died the same night your mother did, Jareth said quietly. He was trying to help her control the manifestation. Trying to be her anchor. But he paused, exchanging a look with Charlotte. He wasn't strong enough. The power that erupted from her when she lost control, he was standing too close. Ella felt like she'd been punched. She killed him. The magic killed him, Charlotte corrected firmly. Your mother never would have hurt him intentionally. She loved him more than anything. That's what made losing him so devastating. The grief, the guilt, it broke whatever control she had left. And 43 wolves died because of it. Just like 43 wolves will die if I can't control this, Ella whispered, pressing her palms flat against the table. Just like everyone I care about will die because I'm a walking weapon with no idea how to disarm myself. Hey! Jareth's hand covered hers, warm and steady. You're not your mother. You have something she didn't. What? Me. His eyes held hers with absolute conviction. Your father was a good man, but he was human strength. An Omega warrior with a kind heart and brave intentions. I'm an Alpha King, Ella. My power isn't just wolf, it's ancient, primal, built over generations of the strongest bloodlines in the Northern Territories. If anyone can anchor you through this, it's me. That's actually true, Charlotte interjected, flipping to another page. According to the research I've done, successful wolf-witch bonds require a power differential. The anchor needs to be strong enough to ground the hybrid's magic without being consumed by it. An alpha, especially one as powerful as Jareth, is the ideal match. So what do we do? Ella asked. How do we create this bond? Charlotte's cheeks flushed slightly. Well, that's the complicated part. Jareth raised an eyebrow. Complicated how? The bond requires complete vulnerability from both parties, Charlotte explained, not quite meeting their eyes. Physical, emotional, and magical intimacy. The hybrid and their anchor need to be completely open to each other, no walls, no defenses, no holding back. Only then can the anchor's power intertwine with the hybrid's magic and create the stabilizing effect. You're talking about the mate bond, Jareth said slowly. I'm talking about a bond that goes deeper than the traditional mate bond, Charlotte corrected. The mate bond connects wolves. This connects everything: wolf, magic, humanity, soul. It's permanent, unbreakable, and once formed, you'll feel each other's emotions, share each other's strength, and be bound together until death. Ella's heart hammered against her ribs. And if we don't form this bond before the blood moon peaks? Then you'll face the manifestation alone, Charlotte said grimly. And based on your mother's notes, your chances of survival are approximately 15%. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 15%, Ella repeated numbly. But with the bond, Charlotte continued, with Jareth anchoring you, guiding the power instead of suppressing it, your chances increase to roughly 60%. 60, Jareth said. That's still better than 15, Ella interrupted. She turned to face him fully. We have to try. We have to. The door burst open again, and this time it was Cade, one of Jareth's senior warriors, his face flushed with urgency. Sire, we have a problem. Crimson Moon's army, they're moving faster than expected. Our scouts estimate they'll reach our borders by dusk, not nightfall. Jareth cursed viciously. How is that possible? They're using forced marches, pushing their warriors beyond normal endurance. Cade's expression was troubled. They're sacrificing their fighters' strength for speed. It's like they're desperate to reach us before the blood moon rises, Ella finished. They want to attack while I'm mid-manifestation. While I'm at my most vulnerable and dangerous. And our defenses? Jareth asked sharply. Still not ready. We need at least 8 more hours to properly fortify the southern perimeter. As it stands, if they attack at dusk, they'll break through our lines within an hour. Jareth's hand clenched into a fist on the table. Then we evacuate non-combatants to the mountain stronghold. Children, elderly, anyone who can't fight, get them out now. I want the palace cleared except for warriors and essential personnel. That will take time we don't have, Cade protested. Then make time, Jareth snarled, his alpha power flooding the room. I will not have civilians caught in the crossfire of this battle. Move. Now. Cade fled and Jareth turned back to Ella and Charlotte, his expression carved from stone. We're out of time, he said flatly. We have maybe 6 hours before all hell breaks loose. 6 hours to form this bond, train Ella to control her power, and prepare for a battle we're almost certainly going to lose. Then we better stop wasting time talking about it, Ella said, straightening her spine. Charlotte, what do we need to do? What's the first step? Charlotte looked between them, then sighed. The first step is honesty. Complete honesty. You need to share your deepest fears, your worst memories, your most closely guarded secrets. No lies. No omissions. The bond can only form if there are no walls between you. I thought we already did that, Ella said. This morning when Jareth told me everything. That was a start, Charlotte interrupted. But there's more, isn't there, Jareth? Things you haven't told her yet. Things you're still holding back because you're afraid of how she'll react. Jareth's jaw tightened. Charlotte. Tell her, Charlotte said firmly. Because if you go into this bond with secrets still between you, it will fail. And you'll both die. For a long moment, Jareth said nothing. Then he moved to the window, staring out at his territory with an expression that looked like mourning. 3 years ago, he began quietly, I found your mother's body. Ella's breath caught. What? My father told everyone she'd fled the territory. That she'd abandoned you and run. But I never believed it. So when I became Alpha King, one of the first things I did was launch a private investigation. He paused, his reflection in the glass looking haunted. I found her on the northern border, exactly where my father's hidden records said she'd be. What was left of her anyway? Jareth, Ella whispered, moving closer. She'd been dead for 21 years by then. But wolf-witch bodies don't decay normally, the magic preserves them. She looked like she'd just fallen asleep, except for the scorch marks covering every inch of her skin. The ground around her was burned in a perfect circle, 50 feet in diameter. Nothing grew there. Nothing lived there. The magic had salted the earth. Why didn't you tell me? Ella asked, her voice breaking. Because I took something from her body, Jareth admitted, finally turning to face her. Something my father had missed. Something she'd been clutching in her hand when she died. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. When he unfolded it, Ella saw a silver locket, tarnished with age but still beautiful. Open it, Jareth said, holding it out to her. With trembling hands, Ella took the locket and pried it open. Inside were 2 miniature portraits, one of a woman with auburn hair and blue eyes, one of a man with kind features and a gentle smile. Her parents. I've been carrying this for 3 years, Jareth said quietly, trying to work up the courage to give it to you. But every time I tried, I'd imagine the questions you'd ask. Where did I get it? How did I find your mother? Why did I never tell you she was dead? And I couldn't face your hurt, your anger. So I kept it. Kept this piece of your history from you because I was a coward. Ella stared down at the faces of her parents, people she'd never known, people who died before she'd had a chance to understand who they were. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but the power inside her remained strangely calm, as if it knew this grief was necessary. Thank you, she finally said, for finding her, for bringing me this. Even if it took you 3 years to give it to me. You're not angry? Jareth sounded stunned. I'm devastated, Ella corrected, closing the locket and pressing it to her heart. But I understand why you waited. You were trying to protect me from pain. It's what you always do, even when it's the wrong choice. She looked up at him. But no more protecting me from the truth, Jareth. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. No more protecting you from the truth, he agreed roughly. I swear it. Good, Charlotte said, satisfaction in her voice. That's progress. Now, Ella, your turn. What are you holding back? What haven't you told him? Ella's grip tightened on the locket. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do, Charlotte said gently. There's something you're afraid to admit. Something that scares you even more than your power. What is it? For a long moment, Ella stood frozen, the words caught in her throat. Then, quietly, she spoke. I'm afraid, she admitted, that when I fully manifest, when this power takes over completely, I won't just lose control. I'll want to lose control. Because there's this part of me, this dark, angry part, that wants to burn everything down. That wants to make everyone who ever looked at me like I was nothing feel what I felt. The Coven. Crimson Moon. Every wolf in this pack who treated me like I was invisible for 7 years. Her voice cracked. I'm afraid that the monster isn't the magic, Jareth. I'm afraid the monster is me. The confession hung in the air, raw and terrible. Then Jareth crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms with such fierce tenderness that she broke. Sobbed against his chest while he held her, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapped around her waist like he could hold her together through sheer will. You're not a monster, he said fiercely. You're a woman who's been hurt and ignored and underestimated your entire life. And you're angry. You should be angry. But Ella, listen to me, being angry doesn't make you a monster. What you do with that anger determines who you are. And I know you. You'd burn yourself to ash before you'd hurt an innocent person. How can you be sure? She whispered. Because I've watched you for 7 years, he said. I've seen you give your dinner to a younger Omega who is hungry. I've seen you stand up to warriors twice your size when they were bullying someone weaker. I've seen your heart, Ella. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. The magic doesn't change that. The anger doesn't erase it. You're good. Down to your bones, you're good. Ella pulled back just enough to look up at him. What if I'm not strong enough? What if the power is too much and I can't? Then I'll be strong enough for both of us, Jareth interrupted. That's what the bond means, remember? We share strength. Share burden. You're not facing this alone anymore. Promise me something, Ella said desperately. Promise me that if I do lose control, if I become something dangerous, you'll stop me. You won't let me hurt innocent people because you love me. You'll do what needs to be done. Ella, promise me, Jareth. Please. He stared down at her, and she saw the refusal in his eyes. Saw him wanting to promise he'd never hurt her, never give up on her, never do anything but love her unconditionally. But slowly, painfully, he nodded. I promise, he said hoarsely. If you become a threat to innocent lives, I'll stop you. But Ella, it will never come to that. I won't let it. Okay, Charlotte said, her voice thick with emotion. That's enough honesty for now. Let's move to the next step, the actual bonding ritual. What do we need to do? Jareth asked, still holding Ella like she might disappear if he let go. You need to mark each other, Charlotte explained. A traditional mate bite, but deeper. You'll need to draw blood, exchange it, and let your powers mingle in the wound. It will hurt, probably more than anything you've experienced. But if it works, you'll be bound. Permanently. And if it doesn't work? Ella asked. Charlotte's silence was answer enough. We should do it now, Jareth decided. Before the battle. Before anything else can go wrong. But before they could move, a massive explosion rocked the palace. The floor shook, books tumbled from shelves, and through the window, Ella saw a pillar of black smoke rising from the southern wall. What the hell? Jareth started. Liam burst through the door, blood streaming from his nose, his expression panicked. They're here, he gasped. Crimson Moon didn't wait for dusk. They attacked now. And sire, they brought siege weapons. They're tearing through our southern wall like it's paper. We have maybe 20 minutes before they breach the inner perimeter. That's impossible, Jareth snarled. They were still hours away. They used magic, Liam interrupted. Someone, something opened a portal. Transported their entire army directly to our border. We never saw them coming. Ella felt ice slide through her veins. The coven. Mara. She's helping them. She's creating the chaos she needs, Jareth realized with growing horror. She wants us distracted, wants me on the battlefield, wants Ella vulnerable. Another explosion, closer this time. Screams echoed through the palace corridors. We're out of time, Charlotte said urgently. You need to form the bond now or… I need to defend my pack, Jareth interrupted, already moving toward the door. I need to. If you leave this room without completing the bond, Charlotte said sharply, Ella will face her manifestation alone. And when she loses control and burns through this palace, your pack won't have anything left to defend. Jareth froze, torn between two impossible choices. Go, Ella said quietly. Your pack needs you. I'll figure this out. No, Jareth turned back to her, his expression fierce. No, I'm not leaving you. Not again. Not ever. Your pack is dying. And you're my pack too, he said fiercely. You're my mate. And I'm not abandoning you to face this alone, no matter what's happening outside this room. Jareth, please. Ella. He cupped her face in his hands. I've spent 7 years putting my pack before my heart. I've made every decision based on duty and responsibility and what an alpha king is supposed to do. But right now, in this moment, I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. Because if we don't have this bond, if we don't face what's coming together, then there won't be a pack left to save anyway. Another explosion. Closer. The windows cracked but didn't shatter. He's right, Charlotte said. Form the bond. Now. I'll go coordinate the defenses until you're finished. She hurried from the room, leaving Ella and Jareth alone in the study while their world fell apart around them. Come here, Jareth said softly, leading her away from the window. We don't have much time. I'm scared, Ella admitted as he sat in one of the large armchairs and pulled her down to straddle his lap. What if it doesn't work? What if I hurt you? Then you hurt me, he said simply. But I trust you, Ella. With my life. With my soul. With everything I am. He tilted his head, exposing the strong column of his throat, the most vulnerable place for a wolf. An act of absolute trust. Take what's yours, he said quietly. And I'll take what's mine. And we'll be bound forever. Ella leaned forward, her lips brushing his pulse point. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. Could smell his scent, wild and pine-sharp. Could sense his wolf rising to meet hers, or what should have been hers. I love you, she whispered against his skin. I've loved you for 7 years, and I'll love you for 700 more. I love you, he replied, his hands tightening on her waist. Now bite me before I lose my nerve and do something stupid like try to protect you from this too. Ella smiled despite everything and bit down. The taste of his blood exploded across her tongue, copper and wild magic and alpha power so strong it made her head spin. But more than that, she felt him. Every fear, every hope, every desperate desire to be worthy of her love. Every moment of the last 7 years when he'd watched her from afar and wanted her with an intensity that terrified him. Every sacrifice he'd made, every choice he'd regretted, every time he'd lain awake at night wishing things could be different. And underneath it all, she felt his absolute, unshakable conviction. She's mine. I'm hers. Nothing else matters. Then his teeth sank into her throat, and she gasped as his power flooded into her. It was fire and ice and lightning all at once, racing through her veins, intertwining with her magic, creating something new. Something that was neither wolf nor witch nor alpha, but all of them combined. The bond snapped into place like a lock clicking home. And suddenly, Ella could feel everything. His determination. His fear. His love so vast and deep it threatened to drown her. And through their connection, she felt him experiencing her emotions too, her anger, her hope, her bone-deep terror that she'd fail everyone she loved. You won't fail, his voice echoed in her mind. We won't fail. Together. Together, she agreed. They pulled back simultaneously, blood on their lips, their eyes glowing, his with alpha gold, hers with silver-white magic. The air around them crackled with energy, and Ella felt the power inside her respond to Jareth's presence. Felt it settle, just slightly, like a wild animal recognizing its handler. It worked, she breathed. It worked, he confirmed, wonder in his voice. I can feel you. Feel your magic. It's God's, Ella, it's beautiful. But before they could say anything else, the study door exploded inward in a shower of splinters and dark magic. And Mara stepped through, her purple eyes glowing with malevolent satisfaction, flanked by a dozen witches, and Ella's blood ran cold. Cade, Jareth's senior warrior, who was smiling like he'd just won the lottery. There's my spy, Ella whispered. Surprise, Cade said cheerfully, even as Jareth's power exploded outward in rage. You dare, Jareth started, but Mara raised a hand, and invisible force slammed him back into the chair, holding him immobile. Oh, I dare quite a lot, Mara purred. And now that you've so conveniently bonded yourselves together, this is going to be even easier than I planned. She gestured, and the witches moved forward, their hands glowing with dark magic. You see, Mara continued conversationally, the bond you just created? It's exactly what we need for the Ascension Protocol. A hybrid connected to a powerful anchor. When we drain his power through your bond and channel it into your manifestation, you won't just ascend, you'll transcend. Become something beyond even our wildest dreams. No, Ella gasped, struggling against the magical bonds suddenly wrapping around her. Oh yes. And the best part? Mara's smile was vicious. The process will kill him. Slowly. Painfully. And you'll feel every second of his death through your bond. You'll feel his agony, his despair, his love turning to ash. And that grief, that trauma, it will shatter whatever control you have left. You'll ascend whether you want to or not. I'll kill you, Ella snarled, power flooding through her. I'll burn you to nothing. Try, Mara invited. Use your power. Unleash it. And watch as it flows through your bond and kills your precious Alpha King. Because that's what the bond does, little wolf witch. It connects you. Whatever you do to me, he'll feel. Whatever power you unleash, he'll absorb. And he's strong, but he's not strong enough to survive the full force of your magic. Not yet. Not until the blood moon. Ella froze, her power hovering just beneath her skin. Through the bond, she could feel Jareth struggling against the magic holding him, could feel his desperate need to protect her, warring with the knowledge that if she attacked, he might not survive it. They were trapped. And as the blood moon began to rise outside the shattered windows, Ella realized with crushing finality. They'd lost. Time seemed to fracture. Ella could feel everything through the bond, Jareth's rage, his helplessness, his desperate scrambling for a solution that didn't exist. And beneath it all, his love for her, so fierce and absolute that it made her chest ache. I'm sorry, she thought at him through their connection. I'm so sorry I dragged you into this. Don't, his voice echoed back, rough with emotion. Don't you dare apologize for being exactly what I've always wanted. Mara circled them slowly, her witches maintaining the magical restraints, while Cade watched with the satisfied expression of a man who'd just secured his fortune. Tell me, Cade, Jareth said, his voice deadly calm despite the magic pinning him to the chair. What did she offer you? What was worth betraying your alpha? Your pack. Power, Cade said simply. Real power. Not the scraps an Alpha King tosses to his warriors. When the Coven creates their army of ascended hybrids, I'll be their general. I'll have authority over territories you couldn't dream of conquering. You'll have nothing, Jareth corrected coldly. Because the moment they're done with you, they'll discard you like the trash you are. The Coven doesn't share power, Cade. They take it. Something flickered in Cade's expression, doubt, maybe, or fear, but Mara's laugh cut through it. How touching. The Alpha King thinks he can sow discord in my ranks with his final words. She moved closer to Ella, reaching out to trace a finger down her cheek. Ella flinched away, and power surged inside her in response to the unwanted touch. Such potential. Such raw, beautiful power. Your mother would be proud of what you're about to become. My mother would hate you, Ella spat. She ran from people like you her entire life. And died alone because of it, Mara countered. Such a waste. If she'd just accepted our help, accepted what she was meant to be, she could have lived forever. Could have ruled alongside us. Instead, she chose mortality. Chose weakness. Chose love. She said the word like it was poison. And it killed her. Love didn't kill her, Ella said quietly, and through the bond, she felt Jareth's attention sharpen. Fear killed her. Isolation killed her. People like you, hunting her, giving her no choice, but to run, that's what killed her. Semantics, Mara dismissed. Either way, she's dead. And you're about to join her unless you cooperate. So here's what's going to happen. Inapproximately, she glanced at the rising moon, now visible through the shattered windows. 2 hours, the blood moon will reach its peak. Your power will manifest fully, whether you want it to or not. And when it does, we're going to channel it through your bond to your Alpha King, use his strength to amplify it, and force your ascension. And if I refuse? Ella asked, even though she already knew the answer. Then we kill him now, Mara said pleasantly, and you get to feel his death through your bond. Feel his soul tearing away from yours. Feel the part of yourself that's connected to him dying in agony. And when you're broken and grieving and barely holding on to sanity, we'll force the ascension anyway. Your choice, really cooperate and he dies quickly during the ritual, or resist and he dies slowly right now. Through the bond, Ella felt Jareth's resolve crystallize into something adamant. Don't give in, he commanded. Whatever she threatens, whatever she offers, don't give her what she wants. She's going to kill you, Ella thought back desperately. Then she kills me, he replied with such casual certainty that it stole her breath. But at least I'll die knowing you're still you. Still fighting. Still choosing your humanity over their darkness. That's not good enough. Ella's mental voice cracked. I can't lose you. Not when I just found you. You won't lose me, Jareth said, and there was something strange in his tone. Something that felt almost like hope. Trust me, Ella. Trust that I have a plan. What plan? But before he could answer, the palace shook with another massive explosion. Closer than before. So close that dust rained from the ceiling and the remaining windows shattered completely. Liam's voice echoed from somewhere in the corridor, hoarse with desperation. Fall back. Fall back to the inner sanctum. Sounds like your pack is losing, Mara observed with false sympathy. Such a shame. By the time we're done here, I doubt there will be much left of Shadowcrest to rule over, Alpha King. That's when Ella felt it, a subtle shift in Jareth's emotions through the bond. His fear receding, replaced by grim determination and something that felt almost like triumph. What are you doing? She demanded. Something I should have done the moment my father died, he replied. Something I was too afraid to do because I thought it would make me weak. But you taught me something, Ella. You taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing you can do. Before Ella could ask what he meant, Jareth threw his head back and howled. It wasn't a normal howl. It was an Alpha King's summons, amplified by ancient magic and desperate need, carrying across the entire territory and beyond. A call that said, I need you. My pack needs you. Come. And it wasn't directed at Shadowcrest. It was directed at every allied pack within 100 miles. Mara's eyes widened with understanding. No. But it was too late. Through the bond, Ella felt them responding. Felt the answering howls rising from territories all around them. Ire Peak Pack to the east. Storm Ridge to the west. Even packs that had been neutral, that had stayed out of Northern Territory politics, they heard their Alpha King's call for aid, and they answered. You're calling in debts, Mara said, her composure finally cracking. I'm doing what an alpha king does, Jareth interrupted, his voice ringing with command. I'm protecting my pack. And if that means humbling myself, admitting I can't win this battle alone, swallowing my pride and asking for help, then that's exactly what I'll do. The ground began to tremble. Not from explosions this time, but from hundreds, thousands of paws hitting the earth in synchronized rhythm. Running. Converging on Shadowcrest from every direction. That's impossible, Cade breathed, his face going pale. The closest allied packs are an hour away at forced march. Unless they've been waiting at the border since this morning, Jareth said with grim satisfaction. Unless a very wise Alpha King anticipated this attack and asked his allies to mobilize hours ago, to hold position just outside Shadowcrest territory until he gave the signal. Ella stared at him through their bond, seeing the truth of it. You planned this. You knew there was a spy. I suspected, Jareth corrected. Cade was always too interested in intelligence about you. Too eager to know your schedule, your habits. I couldn't prove it, so I let him think he was safe. Let him report back to the Coven that we were unprepared, that we'd be easy targets. And while he was busy being a traitor, I was quietly calling in every favor, every alliance, every debt owed to the Shadowcrest crown. I told them to come ready for war but stay hidden until I gave the word. You used yourself as bait, Ella realized. I used us as bait, he corrected. Because I knew the Coven wouldn't be able to resist the chance to catch us vulnerable. To strike while we were forming the bond, while we were distracted and supposedly defenseless. Mara's face had gone sheet white. You're bluffing. Even with reinforcements, you can't stop what's coming. The ritual is already in motion. The blood moon is rising. In 2 hours, Ella will manifest whether you have an army or not. You're right, Jareth agreed. We can't stop the manifestation, but we can stop you. He smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd just backed his prey into a corner. Charlotte, he called, and Ella felt his satisfaction spike. Now, the elderly healer stepped up from behind a bookshelf where she'd apparently been hiding the entire time, and in her hands was a small glass vial filled with silver liquid. Nullification potion, Charlotte announced cheerfully. Extremely rare, extremely expensive, and extremely effective at disrupting active magical workings. I brewed it while you were all posturing and making speeches. Honestly, villains do love to hear themselves talk. She threw the vial. It shattered at Mara's feet, and the silver liquid exploded outward in a wave of pure anti-magic. The restraints holding Jareth and Ella disintegrated instantly. The witch's glowing hands flickered and died. And Mara stumbled backward, her purple eyes wide with shock as her power simply stopped. What did you? She gasped. I cut your connection to your magic, Charlotte said pleasantly. For approximately the next 15 minutes, you're as powerless as a human. Tick-tock. Jareth moved. One moment he was in the chair, the next he'd crossed the space between himself and Cade in a blur of alpha speed. His hand wrapped around the traitor's throat, lifting him off his feet with casual strength. For the record, Jareth said conversationally, I really wanted to rip your throat out the moment I confirmed you were the spy. But Ella made me promise to show mercy when possible. So instead, I'm going to let my pack decide your fate. And Cade? They're going to be a lot less forgiving than I would have been. He threw the warrior across the room. Cade hit the wall with a sickening crunch and didn't get up. Then Jareth turned to the witches, and his eyes blazed with alpha gold. You have 10 seconds to run, he said softly. After that, you're enemy combatants on my territory during a time of war. And I will show you exactly what happens to people who threaten my mate. The witches looked at Mara, but their leader was still reeling from the nullification potion, powerless and vulnerable. They made their choice and fled, disappearing through the shattered windows in wisps of shadow. That left only Mara. Ella stood slowly, feeling power coursing through her veins, stronger than before, steadier than before, anchored by the bond to Jareth, but fully hers to control. She moved to stand beside her Alpha King, and together, they faced the Voidwalker who'd orchestrated so much suffering. You lost, Ella said quietly. Your spy is neutralized. Your witches fled. Your magic is gone. And in about, she glanced at the moon, 30 seconds. Approximately 2,000 allied warriors are going to crash through what's left of our walls and tear Crimson Moon's army apart. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything. Every detail of your ascension protocol. Every hybrid you've experimented on. Every pack you've infiltrated. Everything. Or, Mara's voice shook with impotent rage. Or, I let the nullification potion wear off, Ella said, and let just a hint of her power flare, silver flames dancing across her skin, and then we find out what happens when a barely controlled wolf-witch hybrid fights a Voidwalker. Want to take that chance? Mara's eyes darted between them, calculating odds that weren't in her favor. Then her shoulders slumped in defeat. Fine, she spat. I'll tell you everything. But know this, Ella Thorne, you've won the battle, but the war is far from over. There are others. Other covens. Other hybrids being hunted even now. And eventually, one of them will succeed where I failed. One of them will create the army we've dreamed of. And when that happens, Jareth interrupted, we'll be ready. Because unlike you, we're not working alone. We have allies. We have each other. And we have something you'll never understand, hope. The sound of thousands of wolves entering the territory rose around them like thunder. Through the windows, Ella could see them pouring over the walls, crashing into Crimson Moon's forces with devastating efficiency. The tide of battle was turning. They'd won. They'd actually won. But even as relief flooded through her, Ella felt the power inside her surge in warning. The blood moon was still rising. The manifestation was still coming. And they had less than 2 hours to prepare for it. Charlotte, she called, not taking her eyes off Mara. How long until the moon peaks? 90 minutes, Charlotte replied, moving to secure Mara with iron chains. Maybe less. Then we need to move fast. Ella turned to Jareth. The bond is working. I can feel your strength anchoring me. But Charlotte was right. 60% survival odds aren't enough. We need to increase them. How? Jareth asked, already knowing he wasn't going to like the answer. Ella pulled out her mother's journal, flipping to a page she'd noticed earlier but hadn't fully processed until now. My mother wrote about a technique, she said slowly. Something she tried the night she died. She called it the surrender. Instead of fighting the magic or trying to control it with force, you let go. You surrender to it completely, trust it completely, and let it reshape you from the inside out. If it works, the power becomes part of you instead of something separate trying to consume you. And if it doesn't work? Jareth asked quietly. Then I die, Ella said simply. But at least I die trying. At least I die fighting for something I believe in, the right to choose my own fate. Jareth pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with desperate strength. I can't lose you, he said hoarsely. Not now. Not when we just found each other. You won't, Ella promised, even though she couldn't be sure. The bond will keep me tethered. Your love will keep me human. And together. Together we can face anything, Jareth finished, pulling back to look at her with eyes that held absolute conviction. I know. I believe that. I believe in you. Liam burst into the study, his armor dented and bloody, but his expression triumphant. Sire, the allied packs have engaged. Crimson Moon is falling back. Where he stopped, taking in the scene. What happened here? Treason, betrayal, and a rather impressive rescue, Charlotte said cheerfully, nudging Mara's unconscious form with her foot. But we can celebrate later. Right now, we need to get Ella somewhere safe for her manifestation. Somewhere she can't hurt anyone if things go wrong. The mountain vault, Jareth said immediately. It's reinforced with magic dampening stone. If her power explodes outward, it'll be contained, Charlotte finished. Good thinking. But Jareth, you need to understand, if you're going to anchor her through this, you'll need to be in that vault with her. And if something goes wrong, if the power overcomes you both, then we die together, Jareth said firmly. But at least we die free. On our own terms. Making our own choices. Ella felt tears burn in her eyes. You're sure? You're really sure you want to risk this with me? Jareth cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears that had started to fall. Ella Thorne, he said softly, I've loved you for 7 years. I've watched you from afar, desperate and hopeless and convinced I could never have you. And now, through some miracle I don't deserve, you're mine. You're my mate, my anchor, my reason for fighting. So yes, I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promise. Through the bond, Ella felt everything he felt, his love, his fear, his unwavering determination to stand beside her no matter what came next. When they pulled apart, the blood moon was fully visible through the broken windows, painting everything in shades of crimson and silver. It's time, Charlotte said quietly. We need to go. Now. Jareth took Ella's hand, their fingers intertwining, and together they walked out of the study. Behind them, Liam arranged for Mara's transport to the dungeons. Around them, the sounds of battle were fading as Crimson Moon's forces scattered and fled. They'd survived the attack. But the real battle, the one that would determine whether Ella lived or died, whether she mastered her power or was consumed by it, was just beginning. As they descended into the mountain vault, a massive chamber carved into the living rock beneath the palace, Ella felt the power inside her building with each step. Felt the moon pulling at something deep in her blood, demanding she answer its call. Charlotte sealed the vault door behind them, her expression grave. Remember, she called through the small window. Surrender to the magic. Don't fight it. And Jareth, no matter what happens, don't let go of her. Your bond is her tether. Your love is her anchor. Don't let go. I won't, Jareth promised. The door sealed with a heavy thunk, leaving them alone in the vault. The walls were covered in glowing runes that pulsed with suppressive magic, designed to contain whatever power erupted within these walls. Ella turned to Jareth, and in the crimson light filtering through the high windows, he looked almost ethereal. Her alpha king. Her mate. Her anchor. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, he said honestly. But we do this together, remember? Whatever comes next, we face it together. Ella nodded and closed her eyes, feeling for the power that had been building inside her for 24 years. Feeling for the magic that wanted to consume her, remake her, destroy her. And instead of fighting it, instead of trying to control it or suppress it, she surrendered. I'm ready, she thought. Show me what I'm meant to be. The power exploded outward with the force of a dying star. And Ella's world dissolved into light and fire and agony and ecstasy all at once. Through it all, Jareth held her hand and refused to let go. Pain. That was the first thing Ella registered. Not the manageable ache of silver burns or the sharp sting of a wolf bite, but pain that rewrote the definition of suffering. Every cell in her body was being simultaneously destroyed and rebuilt, torn apart and reassembled, unmade and remade in the image of something new. She screamed, but no sound emerged. Or maybe the sound was so vast, so all-encompassing, that it transcended hearing. Through the agony, she felt Jareth. Felt him holding her hand like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. Felt his alpha power flowing through their bond, wrapping around her like armor, like shelter, like home. I'm here, his voice echoed in her mind. I've got you. I'm not letting go. The magic was a living thing inside her, wild and ancient and absolutely ruthless. It wanted to expand, to consume, to remake the world in its image. And underneath that primal drive, Ella could feel the whispers of every hybrid who'd come before her. Her mother, the girl Ivy, countless others who'd faced this moment and failed. Let go, they whispered. Stop fighting. Surrender your humanity and become what you were meant to be. But Ella remembered her mother's letter. Remembered the third path that no one had found until it was too late. Love. She reached for Jareth through the bond, not just feeling his presence, but pulling on it. Drawing his strength into herself, yes, but also giving him access to her power. Creating a circuit, a loop, where energy flowed both ways instead of just draining from him into her. What are you doing? Jareth's mental voice was strained with effort. Sharing. Ella managed to think back. The bond goes both ways, right? So I'm not just taking your strength, I'm giving you my power. We become stronger together. That's not how it's supposed to work. Who cares how it's supposed to work? Ella's laugh was slightly manic. We're making our own rules. Now stop trying to protect me and just be with me. In this. All of it. She felt his hesitation, that ingrained instinct to shield her from pain, to bear the burden alone, and then felt the moment he made the choice to trust her completely. The bond opened wider. And Jareth gasped as Ella's magic flooded into him, silver-white power intertwining with his alpha gold. For a terrifying moment, she thought she'd killed him. Thought the raw force of her magic would overwhelm his wolf and burn him to ash from the inside out. But then his power rose to meet hers. Not fighting it. Not trying to control it. Just matching it. Complementing it. His strength to her magic. His earth to her fire. His steady certainty to her wild potential. They began to glow, both of them, silver and gold light spiraling around their joined hands, spreading up their arms, across their bodies, until they were twin stars burning in the darkness of the vault. And the magic that had been trying to consume Ella suddenly stopped fighting. It recognized the bond. Recognized what they'd created together, something that was neither wolf nor witch nor human, but all three woven into something entirely new. This, Ella realized with stunning clarity. This is what my mother never found. Not just an anchor to keep her human, but a true partner. Someone to share the power with instead of just containing it. The pain began to recede, replaced by something else. Something that felt like power, yes, but also like peace. Like coming home after a long journey. Like finally understanding a language she'd been hearing her entire life without comprehending. Her eyes opened, or maybe they'd been open the whole time. She couldn't tell, and the world looked different. She could see the threads of magic woven through everything. Could see the pack bonds connecting every wolf in Shadowcrest to their alpha king. Could see the ancient wards carved into the vault walls, designed to contain explosive power, but buckling now under the pressure of what she and Jareth had become. Ella. Jareth's voice was hoarse, reverent. Are you still you? She turned to look at him, and the relief that flooded his face told her everything she needed to know. Her eyes hadn't gone blank with mindless power. Her expression hadn't become the empty mask of an ascended being with no humanity left. She was still her. Just more. I'm still me, she confirmed, and her voice resonated with layers of sound, human and wolf and magic, all harmonizing. But I'm also something else. Something new. She looked down at their joined hands and saw the light still spiraling between them, silver and gold creating patterns that were almost hypnotic in their complexity. The bond, Jareth said, wonder in his voice. It's not just anchoring you. It's equalizing the power. Distributing it between us so neither of us is overwhelmed. We're sharing it, Ella realized. I have access to your alpha strength, and you have access to my magic. We're not hybrid and anchor anymore. We're partners. In every sense. She tested her power carefully, letting just a tendril of magic extend outward. It responded smoothly, controlled, no longer fighting her for dominance. And through the bond, she felt Jareth's strength reinforcing her control, keeping her grounded. How do you feel? He asked carefully. Ella took inventory. The pain was gone, replaced by a thrumming sense of vitality that made her feel like she could run for days without tiring. Her senses were sharper. She could hear Charlotte pacing anxiously outside the vault, could smell the blood and smoke from the battlefield above, could feel every wolf in the territory through their connection to Jareth. But underneath it all, she still felt human. Still felt like herself. I feel powerful, she admitted. But not consumed. Not lost. I feel like this is what I was always meant to be. Not in spite of my humanity, but because of it. Jareth pulled her close, and she went willingly, tucking her face against his neck and breathing in his scent. Pine and winter and wild wolf and something new, something that smelled like magic and moonlight and forever. We did it, he said softly. You did it. You found the third path. We did it, Ella corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. Without our bond. Without. The vault door exploded inward. Both of them spun, power flooding to their hands instinctively, silver flames in Ella's palms, alpha gold crackling around Jareth's fists, ready to face whatever new threat had emerged. But it wasn't the Coven. It was Mara. The Voidwalker stood in the shattered doorway, her purple eyes wild with desperation and rage, her hands glowing with dark magic that shouldn't have been possible after the nullification potion. How Charlotte's voice came from behind Mara, shocked and horrified. The potion should have kept you powerless for another hour. I burned through it, Mara snarled. Sacrificed 3 years of my life to accelerate my body's natural magic recovery. Worth it to stop this abomination you're creating. She raised her hands, and Ella felt the killing spell gathering, a massive wave of destructive energy aimed directly at her heart. But before Mara could release it, something unexpected happened. Every single ward in the vault activated simultaneously. Not to contain the power inside the vault, but to protect it. The ancient magic recognized what Ella and Jareth had become, recognized the bond they'd forged, the balance they'd achieved, and responded accordingly. Walls of shimmering energy erupted between Mara and her targets, deflecting the killing spell harmlessly into the stone walls. The Voidwalker stumbled back, shock replacing rage on her face. That's impossible, she breathed. The wards don't activate for anyone except the true alpha and his bonded mate, Charlotte finished, her voice filled with awe. They recognize Ella now. Recognize her as Shadowcrest's Luna. As Jareth's equal and partner. Mara's face twisted with fury. No. She's supposed to ascend. She's supposed to become something beyond these pathetic mortal bonds. She's supposed to. I'm supposed to choose my own fate, Ella interrupted, stepping forward. The wards parted for her like water, responding to her presence, her power, her right to walk freely in her own territory. And I choose this. I choose my humanity. I choose my pack. I choose love over power, connection over isolation, partnership over ascension. You're a fool, Mara spat. You had the chance to become a god, and you threw it away for what? A bond? A mate? Mortal concerns that will mean nothing in 100 years when you're dust. Maybe, Ella agreed. Or maybe I'll live for centuries, bound to Jareth through our bond, growing stronger together instead of burning out alone. Maybe our children will inherit this balance, this perfect fusion of wolf and magic, and create a new bloodline that doesn't have to choose between power and humanity. She raised her hand, and silver flames danced across her palm, controlled, beautiful, dangerous. But either way, it will be my choice. Not yours. Not the Coven's. Mine. Mara looked at her for a long moment, and Ella saw the exact moment the Voidwalker understood she'd truly lost. You'll regret this, Mara said quietly. When other Covens come. When other enemies realize what you are. When they hunt you and everyone you love because you're too powerful to be allowed to exist. You'll regret choosing this mortal life over the immortality I offered. Maybe, Ella said again. But at least I'll face it with people I love beside me. At least I'll face it as myself, not as some magical parasite wearing my face. She gestured, and the wards shifted, forming a cage around Mara. The Voidwalker threw herself against them, her magic flaring uselessly against the ancient protections. Take her to the dungeons, Jareth commanded, and guards appeared at Charlotte's signal. Iron chains. Silver-lined cell. And someone wake up our prisoner's former ally. I want Cade to see what happens to traitors who survive long enough to stand trial. As the guards dragged Mara away, the Void Walker still screaming threats and promises of revenge, Ella felt the last of the adrenaline drain from her body. Her legs went weak, and Jareth caught her immediately, supporting her weight with ease. Easy, he murmured. The manifestation took a lot out of you. You need to rest. Can't, Ella protested weakly. The battle. Crimson Moon. I need to. The battle is over, Liam's voice came from the corridor. The beta appeared, battered and bloody but grinning. Crimson Moon surrendered 15 minutes ago. Their alpha is dead, killed by wolves from Ire Peak Pack in single combat. Their warriors are laying down arms as we speak. And Ironwood and Silverfang? They saw which way the wind was blowing and withdrew before they could be fully engaged. We won, sire. We actually won. The relief was so overwhelming that Ella's knees buckled entirely. Jareth swept her up into his arms, cradling her against his chest, and she didn't even have the energy to protest. The pack? Jareth asked urgently. Casualties. 37 wounded, 3 critical but stable, Liam reported. And we lost 12 warriors in the initial assault before the allied packs arrived. But sire, if you hadn't called for reinforcements when you did, if those packs hadn't been waiting at our borders ready to respond, we would have lost hundreds. Maybe thousands. 12 dead. It was still too many. Each one was a wolf Jareth had failed to protect, a member of his pack who died because enemies had come for Ella. Stop, Ella thought at him through the bond, feeling his grief and guilt rising. Stop blaming yourself. They died defending their pack, defending their home. That's not on you. I'm their alpha king, Jareth thought back. Their safety is my responsibility. And you fulfilled that responsibility by calling for help when you needed it. By swallowing your pride and admitting you couldn't win alone. You saved this pack, Jareth. Don't you dare diminish that by focusing on the losses instead of celebrating the lives you saved. She felt his emotions war through the bond, guilt and grief battling against pride and relief, and slowly, painfully, the latter won out. Honor the fallen, Jareth said to Liam. Full warriors' rights. And make sure their families want for nothing. I'll personally see to their care. Of course, sire. Liam hesitated. And congratulations. On your mate bond. The pack can feel it, you know. Can feel that something's changed. Something's stronger. Spread the word, Jareth said quietly. At dawn, we'll have a formal ceremony. I'm going to claim Ella as my Luna in front of the entire pack. No more secrets. No more hiding. She's mine, I'm hers, and anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me for the right to rule. Liam's grin widened. I don't think you'll have many challengers, sire. Not after tonight. Not after she faced down a Void Walker and won. As Liam left to carry out his orders, Charlotte moved closer, her healer's eyes scanning Ella critically. How do you feel, honey? She asked gently. Any pain? Any sense that the magic is trying to resurge? Ella took stock. The power was still there, humming beneath her skin, but it felt settled. Like it had found its proper place within her instead of trying to tear its way out. I feel good, she said honestly. Tired, but good. The magic isn't fighting me anymore. It's just part of me. Like my wolf should have been. Your wolf, Charlotte said thoughtfully. Have you tried to reach for her? After the manifestation. Ella froze. She'd been so focused on the magic, on the bond, on surviving, that she hadn't even thought about her wolf. The presence that should have been with her since her first shift, but had been suppressed by the iron collar, then seemingly erased by the manifestation. Carefully, she reached inward, searching for that familiar awareness. And gasped. Her wolf was there. Not suppressed, not gone, but transformed. She was larger than before, stronger, and her fur, when Ella caught a glimpse of her through their mental connection, shimmered with silver-white light that matched her magic. She's still here, Ella breathed. My wolf. She's still here, but she's changed. She's part of the magic now. They're not separate anymore. They're one. The perfect fusion, Charlotte said softly. Wolf, witch, and human, all three parts of you integrated into a whole. That's what your mother was trying to achieve. That's what she never quite managed. Because she didn't have what I have, Ella said, looking up at Jareth. She didn't have a bond this strong. A partner this perfect. Jareth's eyes softened. I think you're giving me too much credit. You did the hard part. You're the one who surrendered to the magic instead of fighting it. You're the one who trusted enough to let me in. I just held on. You held on when anyone else would have let go, Ella corrected. You shared your strength when it would have been safer to keep it for yourself. You chose to risk everything to save me. Don't diminish that. Charlotte cleared her throat tactfully. As touching as this is, I think we should get you both upstairs. Ella needs food, rest, and probably a bath. And Jareth, you need to address the pack. They'll want to hear from their alpha king after a battle like this. Right, Jareth agreed, though his arms tightened slightly around Ella. Can you walk, or should I carry you? I can walk, Ella said, even though she wasn't entirely sure. I should walk. The pack needs to see that I'm strong. That I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be carried everywhere. The pack, Jareth said dryly, just watched you face down a void walker immediately after manifesting enough power to level a mountain. I don't think anyone doubts your strength. But he set her on her feet anyway, keeping one arm around her waist for support. Together, they walked out of the vault, through the corridors of the palace, and out into the courtyard where the pack had gathered. The sun was rising. Ella realized with shock that they'd been in the vault all night, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The courtyard was filled with wolves, hundreds of them, some from Shadowcrest and others from the allied packs who'd answered Jareth's call. They all turned as Jareth and Ella emerged. And as one, they bowed. Not just the Omegas and subordinate wolves, but the warriors. The Betas. Even the visiting alphas from allied packs lowered their heads in respect. Ella felt tears prick her eyes. These wolves who'd ignored her for 7 years, who'd looked through her like she was invisible, were acknowledging her now. Not because she'd manifested dangerous power, but because she'd stood beside their alpha king and fought for their pack. Because she'd chosen them. Shadowcrest, Jareth's voice rang out across the courtyard, amplified by alpha command. Last night, we faced our darkest hour. We were attacked by a coven of witches who sought to steal one of our own. We were invaded by an army that sought to conquer our territory. We were betrayed by one of our own warriors who sold his loyalty for empty promises of power. A growl rippled through the assembled wolves. But we survived, Jareth continued. We survived because we had allies who answered our call. Because we had warriors brave enough to defend their home. And because we had a woman, a hybrid, a wolf witch, one of the rarest beings in existence, who chose to stand with us instead of ascending to godhood. All eyes turned to Ella. This woman, Jareth said, his voice thick with emotion, has been serving in our kitchens for 7 years. Cleaning our floors. Preparing our meals. Existing in the background while we took her for granted. And last night, she saved us all. Not by becoming something inhuman and terrifying, but by remaining exactly who she's always been: brave, compassionate, and absolutely unwilling to let the people she loves come to harm. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. Ella Thorne, he said formally, daughter of Lyssa and Marcus, survivor of the 4th manifestation, my bonded mate and equal partner, I claim you before this pack as my Luna. As my co-ruler. As the other half of my soul. Will you accept this claim? Ella's throat was too tight to speak, so she just nodded. Out loud, Jareth said gently. The pack needs to hear your acceptance. I accept, Ella managed, her voice rough with emotion. I accept your claim, Jareth, Alpha King of Shadowcrest. I accept the responsibility of being Luna. I accept the duty to protect and serve this pack alongside you. I accept all of it. Jareth smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine and completely different from the cold mask he usually wore, and pulled her close. His lips found hers in a kiss that tasted like promise and new beginnings and forever. When they broke apart, the courtyard erupted in howls, celebrating, accepting, welcoming their new Luna. And as the sun continued to rise, burning away the last shadows of night, Ella felt something settle in her chest. The power was still there, vast and potent and hers to command. But it was no longer the most important thing about her. She was Ella Thorne, daughter of Lyssa and Marcus, mate to Jareth, Alpha King of Shadowcrest, Luna of a pack she'd chosen and that had finally chosen her back. Wolf-witch hybrid who'd found the third path and survived. And most importantly, herself. Still human. Still flawed. Still learning. But loved. And that, she realized, was worth more than any amount of power could ever be. 3 months later, the first snow of winter fell softly over Shadowcrest territory, transforming the landscape into something from a fairy tale. Ella stood at the window of what was now their bedroom, not just Jareth's, but theirs, a space they'd redesigned together to reflect both of their tastes, and watched the flakes drift down like tiny stars. So much had changed in 3 months. The physical scars of battle had healed quickly. The southern wall had been rebuilt, stronger than before, with new wards woven into the stone by a coalition of friendly witches who'd reached out after hearing about Ella's successful manifestation. Apparently, there were other covens, good ones, who'd been fighting against groups like Mara's for centuries. They'd offered alliance, knowledge, and most importantly, friendship. Mara herself was still imprisoned in the dungeons, awaiting trial before the Council of Alpha Kings. Jareth could have executed her immediately, but Ella had convinced him to wait. The Voidwalker had information about other hybrids, other victims of the Ascension Protocol. Information that could save lives if they could convince her to share it. It was slow going, but Charlotte had been working with Mara, offering healing and humanity in exchange for cooperation. And slowly, very slowly, cracks were appearing in the Voidwalker's armor of hatred. Cade was dead. The pack had held a trial, as Jareth had promised, and the evidence of his betrayal had been damning. His execution had been swift, carried out by the families of the warriors who died because of his treachery. Ella hadn't attended, couldn't stomach watching a life end, even one as guilty as Cade's, but she'd felt Jareth's grim satisfaction through the bond. Justice, he'd called it. Necessary closure for a pack that had been wounded. The allied packs had stayed for 2 weeks after the battle, helping rebuild, sharing resources, strengthening bonds that would last for generations. And when they'd finally departed, they'd left behind something precious, respect. For Jareth, for his leadership, for his willingness to ask for help when he needed it. And for Ella, for the Luna who'd faced impossible odds and won. The pack's treatment of her had changed overnight. Where once they'd looked through her, now they met her eyes and bowed. Where once they'd ignored her, now they sought her counsel. She'd gone from invisible servant to respected leader, and the transition had been overwhelming. But Jareth had been there for every moment of it, teaching her, supporting her, sharing the burden of leadership the way they shared everything now, as equals, as partners, as mates bound by a love that had literally saved both their lives. "You're thinking too hard again." Jareth's voice came from behind her, warm with affection. "I can feel your thoughts spinning through the bond." Ella turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, dressed casually in dark pants and a loose shirt, his hair slightly damp from a shower. He looked relaxed. Happy. So different from the cold, remote Alpha King she'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. "Just reflecting," she said, moving toward him. "Remembering how different things were 3 months ago. How terrified I was." "We both were," Jareth admitted, pulling her close. She went willingly, tucking herself against his chest and breathing in his scent. After 3 months, it still made her feel safe. Still made her feel home. But we made it through. Together. Together, Ella agreed. Then she pulled back slightly, a smile tugging at her lips. Speaking of together, Charlotte asked if we'd attend the winter solstice celebration tomorrow night. Apparently, it's tradition for the Alpha King and Luna to light the ceremonial bonfire. More traditions, Jareth said with mock resignation, though his eyes were warm. You realize you've tripled the number of pack gatherings since becoming Luna? The warriors are starting to complain that I'm going soft. The warriors love it, Ella corrected. Maya told me yesterday that pack morale is higher than it's been in decades. People actually feel connected to their leaders now instead of just obeying them out of fear. Maya talks to you about pack morale? Jareth raised an eyebrow. Maya talks to me about everything, Ella said, grinning. The female warrior had become one of her closest friends, along with Charlotte, Liam's mate Kayla, and, surprisingly, several of the kitchen staff who'd once treated her with indifference. She says I'm approachable and actually listen when people talk. Imagine that. Scandalous, Jareth said dryly, but he was smiling. A Luna who treats pack members like people instead of pawns. I learned from the best, Ella said softly, reaching up to cup his face. You've changed too, you know. You're not the cold, distant Alpha King anymore. You laugh. You attend gatherings and actually enjoy them. You let people see that you care. I learned from the best, Jareth echoed, turning his head to press a kiss to her palm. You taught me that strength isn't about standing alone. That asking for help isn't weakness. That love isn't a liability, it's the greatest power there is. Before Ella could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Come in, Jareth called, and Charlotte entered, her healer's bag slung over one shoulder and an expression on her face that Ella couldn't quite read. Sorry to interrupt, Charlotte said, though she didn't look particularly sorry. But Ella, I need to examine you. It's been 3 months since your manifestation, and I want to make sure everything is still balanced. Everything feels fine, Ella said, but she moved toward the sitting area anyway. Charlotte had been checking on her weekly since the manifestation, monitoring the bond, making sure the power remained stable. The magic hasn't surged or tried to take over. The bond is strong. I feel good, Charlotte. Really? I'm sure you do, Charlotte said, pulling out various instruments from her bag. But humor an old woman who's seen too many things go wrong when people assume everything is fine. Ella submitted to the examination, Charlotte checking her pulse, her eyes, the magical signature that apparently glowed around her to those who knew how to look. Jareth watched from across the room, his expression attentive but not worried. Finally, Charlotte sat back, and the expression on her face was triumphant. Well, Ella asked when the silence stretched too long. Is everything okay? Everything, Charlotte said, is more than okay. Ella, honey, you're pregnant. The world stopped. Ella stared at Charlotte, certain she'd misheard. What? Pregnant, Charlotte repeated, her smile growing wider. About 6 weeks along, I'd estimate. Probably conceived shortly after the manifestation, which makes sense. Bonded mates are highly fertile, especially in the first few months after the bond forms. Ella's hand moved automatically to her stomach, which still looked completely flat. But I haven't felt anything. No symptoms, no. Wolf witch pregnancies are different from normal wolf pregnancies, Charlotte explained gently. The magic adapts to support the growing life, which means fewer symptoms early on. But there's no doubt, you're definitely carrying a child. Congratulations. Ella turned to look at Jareth and found him frozen, his expression caught somewhere between shock and overwhelming joy. We're having a baby, she whispered. That seemed to break his paralysis. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her with such gentle reverence that tears sprang to her eyes. We're having a baby, he repeated, his voice rough with emotion. Ella, we're going to be parents. Are you happy? Ella asked, suddenly uncertain. They'd never discussed children, never talked about the future beyond surviving the present. Is this okay? Okay. Jareth pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were wet with tears he wasn't bothering to hide. Ella, this is everything. This is more than I ever let myself hope for. A mate. A Luna. And now a child, our child, born from the bond we forged, carrying both our bloodlines. He laughed, shaky but genuine. I'm terrified and ecstatic and completely overwhelmed, but yes, I'm happy. I'm so incredibly happy. Charlotte cleared her throat tactfully. I'll leave you two alone to process this. But Ella, come see me tomorrow so we can discuss prenatal care. Wolf-witch pregnancies require special attention, and I want to make sure both you and the baby stay healthy. I will, Ella promised. Thank you, Charlotte, for everything. The healer smiled and slipped out, leaving them alone with the news that had just changed their lives forever. A baby, Ella said again, the reality slowly sinking in. Jareth, what if they inherit my magic? What if they have to go through what I went through? Then we'll be there for them, Jareth said firmly. We'll teach them from day one how to balance their power, how to embrace their magic without losing their humanity. They'll have what you didn't, parents who understand, who can guide them, who can help them through every stage of their development. And if there are complications? Ella's old fears rose up. What if my magic interferes with the pregnancy? What if? Then we'll handle it, Jareth interrupted, cupping her face in his hands. Together. Like we handle everything. Ella, listen to me. We survived a blood moon manifestation. We defeated a coven of witches and an invading army. We forged a bond that, according to Charlotte, shouldn't even be possible. We've already beaten impossible odds. Why should this be any different? Because this time it's not just about us, Ella whispered. This time there's a baby. A life we're responsible for. A child who's going to grow up in a world that might fear them because of what they are. Or, Jareth countered gently, a child who's going to grow up in a world that's learning to accept hybrids because their mother showed everyone that wolf witches can choose love over power. A child who'll have two parents who love them desperately, a pack that will protect them fiercely, and allies across multiple territories who'll stand with them. He pressed his forehead to hers, his hands moving to cover her still flat stomach. Our child, he said softly, is going to be extraordinary. Just like their mother. And I can't wait to meet them. Ella felt the last of her fear dissolve, replaced by wonder and anticipation and a love so vast it threatened to overflow. Neither can I, she admitted. Jareth, we're going to be parents. We're going to be parents, he agreed, and then he was kissing her, deep and tender and full of promise. Through the bond, Ella felt his emotions, joy and fear and determination and love, always love, threading through everything. And she sent back her own feelings, letting him know that whatever came next, they'd face it the way they faced everything. Together. 6 months later. The nursery was perfect. Ella stood in the doorway, one hand resting on her very pregnant belly, surveying the room that had taken months to prepare. Soft blue walls covered in painted stars. A crib made from enchanted wood that would grow with the child. Shelves lined with books about wolf history and magical theory and fairy tales about brave heroes who chose their own paths. And in the corner, a rocking chair where Jareth sat every evening, reading aloud to the baby who would arrive any day now. You're supposed to be resting, Charlotte's voice came from behind her, fond but firm. The healer had basically moved into the palace for the final month of the pregnancy, refusing to take chances with what she called the most important birth in Northern Territory history. I'm too anxious to rest, Ella admitted. What if something goes wrong? What if the baby manifests immediately after birth? What if my magic? Your magic has been perfectly stable for 9 months, Charlotte interrupted. The bond with Jareth keeps it balanced. The baby's magical signature is strong but controlled. And I've delivered hundreds of wolf pups, including several from mixed bloodlines. You're in good hands, honey. I know, Ella said, but her hand tightened on her stomach as the baby kicked particularly hard. I want everything to be perfect. I want them to have the childhood I never had. safety, love, parents who. She broke off as another kick hit, stronger this time, and then she felt it, a sudden, warm rush of fluid and a cramping sensation that made her gasp. Charlotte, she managed. I think it's time. Charlotte's expression went from fond to professional in an instant. How far apart are the contractions? That was the first one, Ella said. But I felt my water break and oh gods, that's another one already. Jareth. Charlotte called, her voice carrying through the palace with alpha-level command. Now. Footsteps thundered through the corridors, and then Jareth was there, his face pale with panic. Is the baby? Everyone is fine, Charlotte said firmly, already guiding Ella toward the bedroom that had been prepared for the birth. But we need to move quickly. Wolf-witch labors tend to progress faster than normal ones. Ella, deep breaths. And Jareth, for the love of the moon goddess, pull yourself together. Your mate needs you calm, not panicking. Jareth visibly collected himself, his alpha control sliding into place. He moved to Ella's side, taking her hand, and through the bond she felt his fear transform into steady strength. I'm here, he said quietly. I've got you. We've got this. The next hours were a blur of pain and power and Jareth's hand in hers, anchoring her through every contraction. Her magic surged with each wave of labor, but the bond kept it contained, channeling it into the baby instead of letting it explode outward. And through it all, Charlotte directed everything with calm confidence, assisted by 3 other healers who'd come specifically to help with this historic birth. Almost there, Charlotte said, and Ella could hear the excitement in her voice. One more push, honey. Just one more. Ella bore down with everything she had, feeling Jareth's strength flowing through the bond, supporting her, loving her, believing in her. And then a cry. Sharp and strong and absolutely perfect. It's a girl, Charlotte announced, her voice thick with emotion. A beautiful, healthy baby girl. Ella collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted and exhilarated and desperate to see her daughter. Charlotte cleaned the baby quickly, then placed her on Ella's chest, and Ella looked down at the tiny, perfect face of her child. She had Jareth's dark hair and Ella's blue eyes, and when those eyes opened, they glowed faintly, silver-white magic mixing with alpha gold. She's magnificent, Jareth breathed, his finger gently stroking their daughter's cheek. She's absolutely perfect. She's powerful, Charlotte said, checking the baby's magical signature. I can already feel her potential. But it's balanced. The bond between you two is extending to her, keeping her magic stable even at birth. She won't need to go through what you did, Ella. She'll grow into her power gradually, naturally, with both her parents to guide her. Tears streamed down Ella's face as she looked at her daughter, at the miracle she and Jareth had created together. A child born from a bond that had saved both their lives. A child who would grow up knowing she was loved, wanted, protected. A child who would never feel invisible or unwanted or afraid. What should we name her? Jareth asked softly. Ella thought of her mother, who'd loved her enough to give her up. Who'd fought until her dying breath to protect the daughter she'd never get to know. Who'd left behind a journal that had ultimately saved both their lives. Lissa, she said. After my mother. Lissa Thorne Shadowcrest. Jareth's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect. She's perfect. You're perfect. He leaned down to kiss Ella gently, and their daughter, Lissa, made a small sound of contentment between them. Welcome to the world, little one, Ella whispered to her daughter. You're so loved, so wanted. And I promise, that you'll never have to face the darkness alone. Your father and I will be here for every moment, every challenge, every triumph. We'll teach you to be strong and kind and brave. We'll show you that being different isn't something to fear, it's something to celebrate. And we'll make sure, Jareth added, his voice rough with emotion, that you grow up in a world that's better than the one your mother and I inherited. A world where hybrids aren't hunted. where love is celebrated, not weaponized, where children like you can be themselves without fear. Charlotte cleared her throat, though she was wiping her own eyes. I'll give you three some privacy. But Jareth, you need to announce the birth to the pack. They've been waiting anxiously for hours. Jareth looked torn between his duty and his desire to stay with his family. Go, Ella said gently. Tell them. Tell them their Luna has given them a princess. And then come back to us. He kissed her once more, then pressed a gentle kiss to Lyssa's forehead and left the room. Moments later, Ella heard his howl, triumphant and joyful and carrying the news across the entire territory. And the answering howls that rose up in response sounded like celebration, like welcome, like hope. Ella held her daughter close, feeling the baby's tiny heartbeat against her chest, feeling the faint pulse of power that marked her as something special. You're going to do amazing things, she whispered to Lyssa. You're going to change the world. But right now, you're just my baby. And that's more than enough. 1 year later. The winter solstice celebration was in full swing, the courtyard filled with wolves from Shadowcrest and their allied packs. The ceremonial bonfire blazed in the center, casting dancing shadows across the snow-covered ground. Ella stood beside Jareth on the raised platform, Lyssa balanced on her hip. Their daughter was walking now early, according to Charlotte, but not surprising given her heritage, and talking in simple words that made everyone who heard them smile. Mama, Lyssa said, pointing at the bonfire. Pretty. Very pretty, Ella agreed, kissing her daughter's dark curls. Just like you. Jareth cleared his throat, and the assembled wolves fell silent. 1 year ago, he began, his voice carrying across the courtyard, our Luna gave birth to our daughter, Lyssa. And in that year, much has changed in Shadowcrest. We've formed new alliances. We've welcomed hybrids from other territories who needed sanctuary. We've established training programs to help wolf witches learn to control their power safely. We've become, I believe, what a pack should be: strong, yes, but also compassionate. Powerful, yes, but also kind. The crowd murmured agreement. My mate taught me that, Jareth continued, his eyes finding Ella's. She taught me that being an alpha king isn't about ruling through fear or standing alone against the darkness. It's about building something worth protecting. Creating a community where everyone, regardless of their bloodline or their power or their past, can find a home. He reached for Ella's hand, and she took it, their bond thrumming with shared love and pride. So tonight, Jareth said, we celebrate not just the solstice, but everything we've built together. We celebrate the allies who stood with us when we needed them. We celebrate the hybrids who chose to trust us with their safety. We celebrate our daughter, who represents the future we're fighting to create. And we celebrate love, the force that saved us all when power alone would have destroyed us. The crowd erupted in howls and applause, and Lyssa clapped her tiny hands in delight. As the celebration continued, as wolves danced and sang and told stories around the bonfire, Ella felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. 7 years ago, she'd been an invisible Omega servant, desperately in love with an Alpha King who seemed completely out of reach. She'd had no family, no status, no power, and no hope that anything would ever change. Now she was Luna of Shadowcrest, mate to an Alpha King who loved her with an intensity that still took her breath away. Mother to a beautiful daughter who would grow up knowing she was cherished. And most importantly, she was herself, no longer invisible, no longer afraid, no longer alone. What are you thinking about? Jareth asked, pulling her close while Lyssa dozed against her shoulder. Everything, Ella said honestly. How far we've come. How different things are now. How grateful I am that you saw me all those years ago, even when I thought I was invisible. I always saw you, Jareth said softly. From the very first day. You walked into my life like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, and I've been in love with you ever since. Even when you were chaining me up and breaking your promises, Ella teased gently. Especially then, Jareth said seriously. Because even terrified and desperate and making terrible decisions, I knew one thing for certain: I loved you enough to become a villain if it meant keeping you alive. I just didn't realize that what you really needed was a partner, not a protector. And now? Ella asked. What do I need now? Jareth smiled and pressed a kiss to her temple. Now you need someone to share the burden of leadership. Someone to help raise our daughter. Someone to stand beside you through whatever challenges come next. And I'm honored to be that someone. Always and forever? Ella asked. Always and forever, Jareth confirmed. Through blood moons and battles, through joy and sorrow, through the easy days and the impossible ones. I'm yours, Ella. For as long as we both live. That could be a very long time, Ella pointed out. Charlotte says the bond might extend our lives considerably. We could have centuries together. Then I'll spend every century loving you, Jareth said simply. Seems like a fair deal to me. Lissa stirred in Ella's arms, her eyes opening to reveal that distinctive mix of silver and gold. Dada, she mumbled sleepily. Home. Yes, little one, Jareth said, gently taking his daughter from Ella. Let's go home. Together, they walked through the celebrating crowd, receiving bows and smiles and well wishes from pack members who'd become family. They climbed the palace steps, entered their home, and made their way to the nursery where Jareth tucked Lissa into her enchanted crib with practiced ease. Sleep well, little princess, he whispered, smoothing back her dark curls. Dream of all the adventures you'll have when you're older. All the lives you'll touch. All the changes you'll make in this world. Ella stood in the doorway, watching her mate with their daughter, and felt her heart swell with so much love she thought it might burst. This, she realized, was what her mother had wanted for her. Not power or immortality or ascension to something beyond human. Just this, a family. A home. Love that was real and deep and unbreakable. Come on, Jareth said softly, joining her at the door. Let's let her sleep. We have our own bed waiting, and I fully intend to spend the rest of the night showing you exactly how much I love you. Oh. Ella raised an eyebrow. That sounds promising. I'm an alpha king, Jareth said with mock seriousness. I always follow through on my promises, especially the ones involving my mate. They left the nursery hand in hand, closing the door quietly behind them. And as they made their way to their bedroom, to their shared life, their shared future, their shared forever, Ella thought about the journey that had brought them here. The 7 years of silent love. The betrayal that had broken her heart. The manifestation that had nearly destroyed her. The bond that had saved them both. And now this, a life beyond anything she'd dared to dream. A family built on trust and partnership and love so powerful it had literally changed the world. She'd loved the Alpha King in silence for 7 years. He'd trapped her and broken his promise. But in the end, they'd both been freed. And their love, messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for, had become the foundation for something beautiful. Something lasting. Something that would echo through generations. As Jareth pulled her close and whispered words of love against her skin, as the bond between them sang with contentment and joy, Ella smiled. She was invisible no more. She was Luna. Mate. Mother. Wolf Witch. Hybrid. Leader. But most importantly, she was loved. And in the end, that was the greatest power of all. I'm not crying, you're crying. What an incredible journey this has been. From invisible Omega to Luna, from broken promises to eternal love, from fear to hope, Ella and Jareth's story has been everything. Thank you so much for reading all the way to the end. If you loved this story, please drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Mine was the vault scene where they formed the bond, so intense. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I have so many more stories like this coming. Share this with someone who loves emotional shifter romance, because everyone needs more love stories that make you believe in happily ever after. And remember, love isn't about perfect moments or easy choices. It's about standing beside someone in the darkness and saying, I'm here. I'm not leaving. We'll figure this out together. Until next time, keep believing in love, keep fighting for what matters, and keep howling at that moon. Stay magical, beautiful souls.